Welcome to Quiet Scare, where horror doesn't scream, it whispers. Authentic documented experiences, thoughtfully adapted with literary craft so the core remains intact, and the suspense settles in softly. Like and subscribe to support the channel, and tap the bell for new releases. There are no more than 3 ads in the first 15 minutes. After that it plays straight through. Curated true encounters, elevated into quiet, literary horror for sophisticated listeners. Sleep well and dream dark. I used to think the glow of my monitor was friendly light proof that I wasn't alone. It made the apartment feel less like a box and more like a small stage I could control. Streaming started as background noise for loneliness. A few followers turned into a few hundred. I wasn't famous, just consistent. Every night at 11 I'd go live. Coffee on the desk, cat asleep off camera, rain tapping the Seattle windows. I always opened the same way. Hey internet, let's keep each other awake. The regulars rolled in, usernames I knew, inside jokes that belonged only to us. Chat moved fast enough to feel alive, but slow enough to keep up. That night was no different at first. Bitrate's trash again. I muttered, checking analytics. If the screen freezes, blame my neighbor's Wi-Fi. He's running a blender or a jet engine, not sure which. The chat spammed laughing emotes. Someone typed, maybe he's blending ghosts. Classic Seattle haunting, I said. They all come with caffeine problems. The usual back and forth carried on, until a new username appeared. Not a stranger. Hi Selm, se will pulses kind of the farm. Hey, welcome, I said automatically. I like your blue mug. I frowned. The mug wasn't on camera. It sat behind the keyboard, but I'd posted pictures before. Good guess, I said, keeping the tone light. You always drink from it first. Habit. That one hit differently. Yeah, I guess I do, I said with a smile that felt stiff. Old superstition. An hour later, the storm outside softened to steady rain. We were laughing about a bad movie trailer when Not a Stranger typed, "You don't need that second lock tonight." My laugh died halfway out. The chat erupted. Creepy ban them troll alert. A blur of messages. I opened moderation but the comment was gone. I scrolled back. Nothing. Okay, I said too brightly. Chat's getting creative. The camera feed stuttered. A faint chill reached my fingers, resting on the warm keyboard. Rain air sneaking through the window seam. My reflection in the preview looked half a second late. At 12:37 a.m., a new message appeared. Don't turn around. I froze. The room fell silent except for rain. I looked anyway. Nothing. Just the apartment. The narrow hall. Unmade bed. Monitor glow on the wall. I laughed because thousands of unseen eyes were waiting. Nice try, Not a Stranger, I said. Chat, you're officially on Ghost Watch. Someone typed. Did you hear it? Hear what? The knock. 3 soft taps came from the hallway. My cat's ears twitched. I ended the stream mid-sentence. The silence after disconnecting was physical. I unplugged the webcam, shut the laptop, and stared at my reflection in the blank screen until it disappeared. It had to be a prank. Maybe a friend from Discord. Still, I checked the chain lock. Secure, both locks. Sleep didn't come. Every creak sounded like typing. By morning, I'd convinced myself it was nerves. I reopened the site to watch the recording. The VOD looked normal until the moment Not a Stranger typed "Don't turn around." In the replay, that line and the whole user were missing. The viewer list didn't include them. Worse, the file metadata said it had been uploaded from an unknown origin IP. I posted screenshots to a streamer forum. Replies came fast. Bot glitch. Marketing stunt. Good ARG idea. I closed the tab. That night, I didn't stream. 2 nights later, curiosity won. Back again, I said, smiling into the lens. Tonight we're keeping it cheerful. No ghosts. Regulars teased me about my haunted break. I laughed. Half an hour in, The chat froze except for one line. You moved the mug. The cup was behind the keyboard, unseen. You should drink something. Your throat's dry. The mic caught me swallowing. I ended the stream. For the next week, I tried to prove it was nothing. Factory reset. New passwords, two-factor logins. When I attempted to delete the account, an error appeared. Active session detected. Support replied, no active sessions found. On the 7th night, my router light blinked in the same rhythm as my chat alert. 4 short, 1 long. The notification tone echoed through the speakers, even though every app was closed. Then a voice my own came from the headset lying on the desk. Hey internet, let's keep each other awake. I moved apartments within a month. New ISP, new username, no streaming gear. Still, every now and then a faint glow pulses from the box where I stored the old webcam. The LED should be dead. It isn't plugged in. I tell myself it's residual charge, a glitch. I keep a towel over the box anyway. It's been a year. My life's quieter now. Daylight job, real friends, fewer eyes. But sometimes, late at night, I type my old handle, just to see. It's still there. 1 channel, same name, live, viewer count 1. The thumbnail shows my old apartment lit only by monitor glow. The blue mug sits behind the keyboard, and in chat a single line repeats every few seconds. You left the light on. I haven't clicked it. I keep telling myself I won't. But when the room goes dark, the reflection in my monitor looks like it's waiting for me to go live again. I moved into the apartment after my breakup, mostly for the balcony. It wasn't big, just enough space for a folding chair and an ashtray. But it faced west, and I liked watching the streetlights come on one by one. After years of sharing walls and arguments, silence felt like proof I'd survived something. The building sat on a narrow side street in Portland, Oregon. 3 stories of cracked concrete and chipped paint. My unit overlooked a shared backyard, surrounded by leaning fences. A motion sensor hung above the gate, but it only worked when it felt like it. Most nights the yard turned into a square of deeper shadow. That first week I promised myself I'd quit smoking. By week 2 I was back to 1 cigarette a night, standing barefoot on the cold concrete, telling myself it helped me think. The air smelled like cut grass and diesel. The city hummed in the distance, a mechanical lullaby. One night around midnight, I was out there scrolling my phone, when a sound came from the yard, a single crunch, like someone stepping on gravel. I leaned over the railing, expecting to see a raccoon. Instead, a man was standing at the far corner of the fence. Looking up, he didn't move or speak. He just stood there, face lost in shadow, hands in his pockets. "Hey," I called down, trying to sound more annoyed than afraid. "Private property." He didn't answer. The only movement was his head tilting slightly, as if he were deciding how much of me he could see in the dark. I backed up toward the sliding door. "I'm calling the landlord," I said, and stepped inside long enough to grab my phone. When I looked back, he was gone. The yard was empty again. Motion light still dead. I told myself it was a random passerby cutting through the gate. Maybe a delivery guy checking the address. Still, I locked the door and wedged a chair under the handle before I went to bed. The next night, I came home from work and found the gate wide open. The landlord shrugged. "When does that sometimes," he said, though the latch was too heavy for wind. He promised to fix the light. He didn't. For a week, nothing happened. I smoked less, kept the curtains drawn. Then, on a Friday night, I heard the crunch again. This time, I stayed inside and peeked through the blinds. The man was back. Same spot, same stillness. But now the light flickered on for half a second. In that flash, I saw him clearly. Plain jacket, thinning hair, ordinary face. The kind of man you'd never notice twice. He lifted a hand and waved. It was a small, almost polite gesture, but it felt wrong, like watching someone wave at a funeral. I shut the blinds and called the police. They arrived 15 minutes later. took a quick look around, and told me he was probably a trespasser using the alley as a shortcut. They recommended I install a motion light for deterrence. I didn't bother explaining. After they left, I replayed the moment in my head again and again. The wave, the calm patience of it. Most creeps I'd met in the city wanted attention, reaction. He seemed content to wait. The next day, I bought a small security camera and aimed it at the yard. I told myself that if I could see what was happening, it would make sense. For 3 nights, I sat on the couch watching live feed until I fell asleep. On the 4th night, the feed froze for 1 frame, then went black. When I checked the balcony, the power cord was hanging loose, the plug dangling inches from the outlet, as if someone had crouched directly under the railing and pulled it free with care not to make a sound. That's when I realized he'd come close enough to touch the wall below my feet. I called the landlord again, voice shaking. He said he'd get around to it. I called the police again. They logged the incident. I bought a new lock for the gate myself and installed it in daylight, sweating through my shirt even though the air was cool. For 2 weeks, nothing. Then, just when I started to breathe normally, it happened again. I was half asleep on the couch when I heard a faint metallic rattle, followed by the slow slide of the balcony door, testing its track. I froze. The door was locked. The sound stopped. Seconds later came a whisper from outside. Low, muffled words I couldn't catch. Then silence. I grabbed my phone but didn't dial. I just waited. After what felt like an hour, a light appeared in the yard. Not the motion lamp, but the faint glow of a phone screen. The light drifted slowly toward the wall beneath my balcony, then tilted upward, pointing straight at me. That was the moment I broke. I called 911 and whispered until my voice failed. The dispatcher told me to stay inside, not to engage. I sat in the dark, phone pressed to my ear, listening to the distant siren grow louder. When the red and blue finally washed over my ceiling, I looked out. The yard was empty again. The officer who took my report walked the perimeter and found nothing but footprints in the damp grass. 1 pair, large, leading to the fence and back. He told me to keep my lights on and call if it happened again. I nodded like I believed that would help. I haven't smoked on the balcony since. The chair is still out there, folded and leaning against the wall. Some nights I sit inside with the curtains open, just enough to see the rectangle of darkness below. The new motion light comes on reliably now, triggered by cats, wind, anything. Still, sometimes it clicks on for no reason, and I catch myself waiting for a figure to step into the glow, to lift a hand and wave again. The light usually shuts off within seconds, leaving the yard quiet except for the rustle of leaves. Just enough sound to make me hold my breath, listening for the crunch of gravel that started it all. The thing about working nights at a roadside motel is that quiet has a texture. It isn't silence. It's the hum of the soda machine, the buzz of the fluorescent above the counter, the faint hiss of the highway half a mile away. You learn the difference between still and empty. I've worked the front desk at the Desert Skies Motor Inn for 8 years. 24 rooms, a soda machine that eats quarters, and a neon sign that never agrees on whether it's open or pen. Nights are mine. Paperwork, muted TV, and the sound of rain when we're lucky enough to get it. That night started ordinary. It was August, 11 p.m. The manager had gone home at 9, like always. I ate half a powdered donut from the box she'd left, stale enough to taste like dusted cardboard, and lined up the keys on their rack. Each brass tag had a number stamped into it, 1 through 24. Number 17 was missing. Not checked out, not on the desk, just gone. Probably left on housekeeping's card again. We'd had 1 no-show reservation, some traveling salesman who'd booked online. I marked him unarrived and started the nightly report. The phone rang at 12:10 a.m. The line indicator showed room 17. I picked up, using my best customer voice. Front desk. "This is Dana." A man's voice, low and calm. "Could I get a wake-up call for 6? "Of course, sir. Name and room, please." "17, he said, polite, a little tired. "Just 6, please." I typed the note automatically. "Got it. Wake up call at 6. He said thank you and hung up. I stared at the switchboard. Room 17's light went dark. Two things bothered me. Room 17 was vacant, and I'd never connected that line tonight. It shouldn't have a dial tone. Probably crossed wires. The system's from the 90s. I'd seen stranger. Still, I wrote it down. 12:10 a.m. room 17 call. Guest requested wake up. The rain began tapping the window beside the desk. At 1:03 a.m. the phone rang again. Same light, same tone. I answered fast, half curious. Front desk. The same voice. Could I get a wake-up call for 6? I already... Click. I pulled up the security feed for the west corridor. The camera was old and grainy but showed the door to 17 clearly. Closed. No movement. The light under the door glowed faintly, though no one had checked in. The hairs on my arms lifted. Crossed wire, I said out loud. Old building. Happens. By 1:30 I'd convinced myself enough to keep working. The air smelled faintly of ozone from the copier and damp carpet. Then the switchboard buzzed again. Room 17. Front desk, I said, voice steadier this time. No one spoke. Just a faint hiss like breathing near the receiver. "So, sir?" The breath stopped. Then the same voice. "Thank you for staying up." Click. I stared at the handset. Its plastic felt warm against my palm, as if someone else had just been holding it. At 2 a.m., I took the spare flashlight and decided to look. The carpet in the corridor was damp, where rain had blown under the doors. I passed 15, 16, both dark, and stopped at 17. The air felt cooler there, a faint smell of old soap, the kind we stopped stocking years ago. The door was shut tight. I knocked. "Front desk," I called, "just checking your lock." Silence. I leaned down, trying to see any sliver of light. Nothing. When I turned back toward the lobby, the overhead bulb flickered twice and steadied. Back at the desk, the phone light for 17 blinked, once and went dark. I pulled the key log from under the counter. Next to 17 was a name I didn't recognize, D. Carter, and a signature that looked like mine. The handwriting was identical. My stomach tightened. I flipped back through older pages yesterday. Last week, no such entry. The rain eased. Only the soda machine hummed. At 2:37 a.m., the phone rang again. I didn't pick up. It rang exactly 6 times, then stopped. When I finally lifted the receiver, the line was dead. By 3 a.m., I'd unplugged the switchboard. I sat at the desk with coffee gone cold, listening to the storm fade. The air smelled cleaner, like static had washed out of it. Then, faintly from the unplugged cord, I heard a single chime, soft, distant. I didn't answer. At dawn, the manager came in early, cheerful as ever. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Just a long night," I said. She glanced at the key rack. "Oh good, 17's back. Guest must have checked out before sunrise." The brass tag hung perfectly in place, dry, even though I'd searched that spot all night. I opened the ledger. The mysterious entry. D. Carter was gone. The line blank. "Guest left early," the manager said. "Happens all the time." I nodded. "Sure, happens." That evening, I came in for the next shift out of habit. The storm had cleared. The neon sign flickered OP, then open. When I set my bag down, the phone on the counter buzzed once and went silent. I didn't check which line it came from. These days, if a call rings after midnight, I let it. The dark's polite enough without me answering. When people picture social work offices, they imagine soft lighting and inspirational posters about teamwork. Ours had gray carpet, flickering fluorescent bulbs, and a faint smell of reheated noodles that never left the break room. I'd been there 6 years long enough to stop flinching when the phone rang. but not long enough to stop dreaming about quitting. The case that finally broke me started on a Tuesday morning in late winter. A report came in about a man abusing his stepchildren. I'd read 100 files like it, each written in that neutral bureaucratic tone that makes horror sound like bookkeeping. This one had pictures, and even the photos looked like they wanted to look away. My supervisor assigned it to me and a police liaison. We met the oldest child at school. Her arm was bandaged, her eyes fixed on the wall behind me. When she finally spoke, the words came out calm, practiced, like she'd repeated them until they lost meaning. I wrote every phrase, and still it felt like failure. By the time we brought the father in for questioning, I was already exhausted. He didn't deny anything. He leaned across the table, voice low, and said, "That's my house. My kids. You think you can stop me?" When I slid the custody paperwork toward him, he laughed and told me what he'd do to me if we weren't inside that building. Security escorted him out. I pressed the panic button anyway. The next day, my manager told me to skip court for safety. I tried to take that as reassurance. Instead, I spent the morning jumping at every hallway sound, waiting for footsteps that didn't come. 2 weeks later, after staying late to finish documentation, I walked to the parking lot and froze. All 4 tires of my car were flat, rubber carved clean. For a moment, I wondered if I'd hit something, anything that made sense, but the cuts were deliberate, straight lines, intentional. I called my boyfriend to pick me up. When his headlights swept across my car, the damage looked like open mouths. The police took a report and promised extra patrols. I didn't see any. The first letter arrived the following Monday. Our receptionist, an older woman who mothered the entire floor, brought it to my desk already opened. She'd thought it was a thank you card. It wasn't. White paper, typed words, no signature. "You're as good as dead." She burst into tears when she read it. I tried to comfort her even though my own hands were shaking. They set up safety protocols. No one alone after hours, escorts to our cars. But fear still slipped through. I started sleeping with my phone on the pillow, ringtone at maximum. Every truck backfire outside my apartment made me jump. My hands shook whenever the copier warmed up behind me. That sudden click of machinery sounded too close to footsteps. Another letter came 2 weeks later, then another. Each longer, angrier, filled with accusations that I'd kidnapped his children. The language twisted between threats and sermons. They were always typed, mailed from different drop boxes across the county. No fingerprints, no DNA, no clear link. But who else could it be? The police said without proof it was all speculative. They logged each report in the system and wished me luck. That phrase became our office refrain. "We'll log it, good luck." I started noticing a dark green sedan behind me on evening drives through western Ohio. Once, twice, then too many times to ignore. When I turned down a dead-end street and it turned with me, I knew I wasn't imagining it. I drove straight to the station, heart hammering. The car rolled past without stopping. I sat in the lot for 20 minutes before going inside. They checked registrations. Nothing connected to him. By that point, my hands shook so much during home visits I had to carry a clipboard just to steady them. My manager put me on paid leave to recover. I was grateful and humiliated at the same time. Over 6 months, the letters kept coming. Shorter now, as if the writer had run out of words but not anger. Then the pandemic hit, and the world went silent. Everyone worked from home. No more drive-bys, no envelopes under the door, because the office itself was locked. For the first time in months, I could breathe without waiting for the next noise. When the lockdown lifted, the letters had stopped. I told myself he'd moved on. I even went back for a while. Smaller caseload, different supervisor. But every time I signed a new removal order, I imagined an envelope sliding through a mail slot somewhere. One evening, long after the threats had faded, I came home to find a blank envelope on my doormat. No return address. My heart dropped. Inside was nothing. No paper, no message, just emptiness. That was somehow worse. Proof that someone still knew where I lived and wanted me to know it too. I left the department within the month. People said I'd burned out, and maybe I had, but what really ended it wasn't exhaustion. It was the sound the mail slot makes when something slides through. Metal against metal, a quick hiss of air. Even now, years later, I can't hear that sound without turning to look, expecting white paper waiting on the floor, and I still check my tires before I drive anywhere after dark. Libraries change sound at night. During the day, you hear coughs, chair scrapes, the squeak of sneakers on tile. After closing, it's air conditioning and pages settling back into place, books breathing out. I've closed the Main Street Public Library almost every evening for 18 years. It's quiet work, which is all I ever wanted. The clock above the circulation desk ticks past 9 p.m. as I begin the ritual of settling the building for its own shift. I lock the front doors, dim the lights, and start the checklist: thermostats, alarm zones, book drop. The place smells of paper dust, lemon cleaner, and time itself. The overheads flicker once, our building's flirtation with the breaker panel continuing. I pat the wall. You two sort it out. I tell the copier and the lights. Humor keeps a person friendly with ghosts, electrical or otherwise. I push my cart through the stacks, shelving the day's last returns. Children's books go on top. They're light and remind me the world still replenishes itself. At 9:30, the reading lamps glow like small moons. A gust rattles the windows, scattering leaves across the front walk. Everything ordinary, everything mine. The sense of ownership and routine was shattered just 17 minutes later when the impossible happened. At 9:47 p.m., the return chute rattles. That shouldn't happen. Doors locked, no after-hours slot in use until morning. I grasp the cool brass handle, open the bin. One book lies inside. The Heart is a Lonely Hunter, its jacket a little frayed. Inside, the old paper checkout card. Last date stamp, June 12, 1974. Patron, M. Dorset. We went digital in 2002. The card files were shredded long ago. But here it is, neat as ever, ink still blue. The catalog record exists, yet the borrower field is blank. No ID, no barcode. I check the locked doors. Empty street. One buzzing sodium lamp. I shelve the book anyway. Habit wins when logic shrugs. The return of that single, impossible book swiftly turned into a quiet, unsettling pattern over the following nights. Next night, 10:05 p.m., Anne of Green Gables lands in the bin. Card stamp 1978. Patron C. Ellison. By Wednesday, 2 more. A Millet poetry collection and a Zane Grey Western. Obituaries on microfilm confirm both names. Each was last due October 3, the same date tonight. I raise the blinds. Rain slicks the street. In the glass reflection, rows of silhouettes sit reading. When I turn, the chairs are empty. The books keep coming. Spines uncracked. Pages faintly warm, as though just returned. I start greeting them aloud. Evening, Mr. Dorset. Back again, Mrs. Ellison. It feels less absurd than silence. Friday brings To Kill a Mockingbird. Under the due date card, a penciled line reads, "Thank you for keeping us." I touch the words until the graphite smears. That message confirmed the returns weren't random, prompting me to seek answers in the dust and history of the library's deep archives. I dig through basement ledgers, brown binders, dust like sifted sugar. Every title that's reappeared was checked out between 1968 and 1980, many on the same day each year. Coincidence shouldn't smell of pipe smoke and rain when the building's sealed. At 11:30 p.m., thunder kills the lights. Only the red exit sign glows. Then the return slot clangs. One final thump. By flashlight, I find a children's book, Goodnight Moon. Card stamped April 1955, where the name should be. We'll be quiet now. When power returns, the air smells of old binding glue and lilacs. I reshelve it carefully. A month has passed since that final dark encounter. and I have since decided to stop fighting the impossible, instead accepting my role as the keeper of their literary memory. The late night returns continue, but never when anyone else closes. I've stopped trying to prove it. Some libraries loan silence and receive memory in return. I leave the drop slot unlocked after 9 p.m. Every morning, the cart holds one more book that shouldn't exist, each dusted clean, each card restored. I keep a separate notebook titled After Hours Circulation. Sometimes I imagine the night patron's calloused hands, ink-stained fingers, reading under porch light somewhere time forgot. When the last lamp flickers and the copier hums itself to sleep, I whisper goodnight to the shelves. They rustle faintly, like pages turning. If you ever pass our library after closing and see a lamp burning by the window, that's me finishing the ledger, waiting for the soft clatter that means another story found its way home. Because every borrower, past or present, deserves to be checked back in, and I'm still on duty for all of them. The quiet strangers in the dark. Apartment living teaches you to translate sounds. The pipes clang one way when a neighbor showers, another when the heat kicks on. Doors slam, kids run, somebody's television hums through the vents. You learn what's normal, what belongs to the building. So when something new happens, you feel it first in your body before your brain gives it a name. It was the second week after we'd moved into our place, when the new sound came, a soft metallic scrape at our front door. My girlfriend, Leah, had already fallen asleep. I was half awake, scrolling headlines I wouldn't remember in the morning. The scrape came again, followed by a quiet, deliberate turn of the knob. At first, I thought she'd gotten up for water. Then the knob twisted all the way until the latch clicked against the frame. Someone was testing it from the outside. I froze. The door to our unit opens directly to the exterior landing. One flight up from the parking lot. No hallway, no security gate. Just a single motion light that only works if you wave your arms under it. I waited for the light to come on through the peephole. It didn't. Leah stirred. "What is it? What is it?" I whispered, "Someone's at the door." The knob rattled again. Slow, confident. Then a faint knock, like a question asked by someone who already knew the answer. Leah sat up. "Maybe it's the neighbor." "No one knocks that soft at midnight," I said, and slid off the couch as quietly as I could. My phone was charging in the kitchen. The short walk to get it felt like crossing open ground. Another knock. Then stillness. I dialed security and whispered what was happening. The guard said he'd drive over. "Stay inside. Don't engage," he told me, voice too calm to match my pulse. For a minute, there was nothing. Then the sound of feet shifting on the landing. Rubber soles on concrete. I peered through the peephole. Darkness. The bulb above the door was out again. Something brushed the door. A hand, maybe. You can hear that small skin-on-metal friction when you're close enough. I watched the knob twitch once more, then go still. Leah whispered, "Should we call 911? Before I could answer, the footsteps moved away, down the stairs, quick but unhurried. I waited until I heard the distant squeal of the building's outer gate, before breathing again. 5 minutes later, the security guard knocked 3 sharp raps that sounded mercifully human. He checked the landing with his flashlight. Nothing. No footprints, no cigarette butts, just an empty stairwell and the smell of cold air. We filed a report anyway. He promised extra patrols. I watched his flashlight disappear around the corner, and then double-locked the door. Leah couldn't sleep. She kept asking if I'd imagined it. I wanted to believe I had, but when I checked the outside handle through the peephole, one last time, I noticed a faint smear of oil where a palm might have been. When I opened the door in daylight the next morning, the mark was real, dull gray against the brass, faint smell of engine grease. 2 nights passed without noise. On the third, around 1 a.m., the same scrape returned. Shorter now, almost testing whether we were still listening. The dog downstairs started barking. I went rigid in bed, listening to each small sound translate itself. Bark, elevator hum, refrigerator click. Then one sound that didn't fit, a slow, steady breathing right outside the door. It lasted maybe 10 seconds. Then a voice, low and even, said, "Open up." No threat, no yelling, just the calm tone of someone sure he belonged inside. I called 911 without moving from the bed. The dispatcher kept me on the line until the pounding of footsteps and the bark of radios filled the hallway. When I opened the door for the officers, they swept their lights across the landing and down the stairwell. The gate was open again. No one in sight. They found a footprint in the dust on the lower step. Barefoot, heel to toe, like someone walking quietly. One of the officers looked at it, then at me, and said it could belong to anyone. He advised a peephole camera and more lighting. I bought both the next morning. Since then, the cameras caught delivery drivers, teenagers, nothing else. But every so often, right before the sensor triggers, I see a blur, a shadow that lingers half a second longer than it should, like someone just beyond the light's reach. Leah hates that I keep the recordings. She says they feed the fear. Maybe she's right. Still, I watch them sometimes when I can't sleep, pausing on those blurry frames, wondering if he's still out there walking the stairs, hand hovering inches from every doorknob, waiting for one that isn't locked. Outside our window, the night hums with ordinary noises, traffic far off, an elevator cable whining, the slow drip of rain off the awning. Those are the sounds that tell me, for now, the world is normal. Mostly it's paperwork. I've spent 22 years riding the rails for Western Continental. Same route, Chicago to Denver, overnight. 1,008 miles of hum and sway. The passengers change. The rhythm never does. My job is to keep order, scan tickets, check manifests, keep the schedule humming even when the world outside blurs to nothing. If you want to know the true sound of America after midnight, it's the muffled click of wheels on jointed rail and the hiss of coffee in a steel carafe. The night's work officially began the moment we rolled out of Union Station at 10 p.m., under a drizzle, fine enough to look like smoke. The platform lights rippled across the windows while the locomotive yawned itself awake. The cafe attendant handed me a cup of what he swore was coffee. Diesel in liquid form, I said. He grinned. Better than running out. By the time we cleared the city limits, passengers had settled. The usual mix of business types, students, and one family with too many snacks. When the train steadied at cruising speed, I began my walk car to car, light touch on the seat backs, greeting those still awake. Evening, I said to a woman scrolling her phone. Denver connection's on time. She smiled, earbuds in, nodding to a beat I couldn't hear. Everything ordinary. Just the way I like it. It was at 11:58 p.m. when we stopped in Springfield that the routine began to falter. 3 boarded, 2 disembarked. I scanned tickets, punched the stubs, slid them into the seat clips, 1 for each occupied spot. Manifest showed 57 passengers. By 12:15 a.m., the lights dimmed for the night run. I sat in the vestibule seat with my clipboard, marking mileage. The vibration of the brass handrail beneath my palm told me the train was running smooth. When you work nights long enough, your eyes invent company. Still, I kept the stub. After the strange sighting of the stub and the man's reflection, I continued my routine even as the cars went dark, and conversation melted into breathing. I checked doors, latches, anything that could rattle loose. In the observation car, a man dozed by the window, his reflection faintly awake. It blinked once after he didn't. Outside, lightning flared silver over prairie grass. At 1:35 a.m., the printer in my compartment clattered. New manifest update. 62 passengers. Dispatch. Negative. Manifest steady at 57. Then the printer's haunted, I said. They laughed. Check your paper feed, Carl. The new sheet listed. Halbridge, Lee, F. Waters, 2 unreadable. Seat 32B among them. At 2 a.m. the air smelled faintly of ozone from heater ducts. I walked coach again. 57 bodies, 62 reflections. Some turned their heads a beat late. Others smiled when their owners slept. Lightning struck again, every window filled with silhouettes, some familiar, some not. Despite the growing evidence of a presence I couldn't explain, I forced myself to perform my duties, looking for a logical way to verify what I was seeing. By 4 a.m. we were slicing through flat prairie under a full moon. The windows mirrored the interior like black glass. A young man near the back stirred. "You okay, sir?" "Just rounds," I said. He rubbed his eyes. "Did you move my bag?" "2 bags hung from the rack." "I'm the only one in this row," he said. The second bag was cold, damp, and nearly weightless. Inside, a punched ticket. F. Waters, seat 32B. The passenger frowned. "That's not mine." "Probably a mix-up," I told him, placing it with the rest. At 4:27 a.m., the printer spat another sheet. 68 passengers. Every reflection now had a seat, even where no one sat. Near the front, I saw my own reflected self, walking the aisle seconds behind me. The inexplicable journey finally drew to a close as we pulled into Denver at 5:12 a.m. Dawn smeared pink across the mountains. Passengers gathered bags, yawning, drifting toward the platform. I wished each a good morning, tore their final stubs, filed them by number. When the platform cleared, I walked the cars again. Every seat pocket held a used ticket, neatly punched, sequential to my cutter. 68 in total. Dispatch would call it a glitch. Still, I logged every one. The phenomenon of the extra passengers didn't end with the Denver arrival. It simply became a recurring part of my life on the rails. Years later, I'm still on nights. New trains, same rhythm. Sometimes a stub appears where no one sat, edges soft from use. I keep them in a tin behind my clipboard. When the rail bends through the dark stretches of Kansas, I look out. Reflections stir, people shifting in empty seats, glancing back like commuters running late from somewhere else. Every drive-through worker has a few stories about weird customers. Some flirt, some argue, some forget they've even ordered. But the man who recorded me that night wasn't just weird. He's the reason I still check rearview mirrors when I close up after dark. It was late August 2021 in Ohio. Humid, slow season. I'd been working nights at the Burger Box for 3 years while finishing online classes. 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. was my usual. Enough tips to pay rent, not enough traffic to hate humanity. The crew that night was me at window, Diego on grill, and a shift manager half asleep in the office. The air smelled like fryer oil and wet pavement. Thunder rolled somewhere distant. Around 12:30 a.m., the headset beeped, and a man's voice said, "Hey there, sweetheart." That happens more than you'd think, so I kept it professional. "Welcome to Burger Box. Go ahead with your order." He didn't. He just chuckled and said, "You sound young." I clicked the mic off, waited a beat, then back on. "Sir, do you want to order or not?" He ordered a single coffee. When he pulled up, he was older, mid-50s maybe. Gray hair, nice car, shirt buttoned wrong. He held his phone up like he was FaceTiming someone. Lens aimed straight at me. $2 even, I said, reaching for his cash. He didn't hand it over. He just stared through the screen. I could see myself reflected, small and tired, framed by fluorescent light. "You've got a pretty smile," he said. The words hit flat. No tone. I kept my palm out, jaw tight. He finally let the bills fall into my hand, but when I offered the coffee, he didn't take it. He just kept that phone raised. "Sir," I said, voice sharper, "please take your drink so we can keep the line moving." He smiled wider. "Don't be scared." That phrase always lands wrong, like hearing your own name in a stranger's mouth. I set the cup down and closed the window. He stayed there a few seconds, recording the glass between us, then drove off. I figured that was the end of it. At 2 a.m. we shut down. Diego and I mopped, joked about nothing. When I went out to toss the trash, A car idled in the far corner of the lot. The same one. Headlights off. When the bag hit the dumpster, the engine revved and the car eased out to the street, pausing just long enough for me to see the driver's face lit by a phone screen. He was recording again. I locked the door, heart hammering, and called the manager. She told me to stay inside until my ride came. I watched the empty road until dawn, bled gray across the lot. The next afternoon, my mom called, her voice shaky. She'd gotten a Facebook message request from a stranger, a short video of me at work, smiling through the window, captioned "Late Night Angel Serving Coffee." The post included my first name on the tag, and the town name printed on the store uniform. Enough for anyone local to know exactly where I worked. It had my name tag visible, framed dead center. No words, just a heart emoji. I reported it to the police. They said online harassment is tricky, unless there's a threat. The video came down after I flagged it, but not before 2 coworkers saw it. One joked that I'd gone viral. I didn't laugh. For a week, he didn't come back. Then, during a Sunday shift, the same car rolled up, same man. He didn't order. He just idled, phone pointed, until I stepped away from the window. The manager went out to confront him. He sped off, coffee cup from another place sitting on his dash. Corporate said they'd escalate the complaint. Nothing changed. By the end of the month, I'd transferred to a day shift at another branch. Different uniform, different schedule. But one night, as we closed, I walked to my car and saw a sedan parked 2 rows over. Engine off. Phone glow inside. Maybe it was him. Maybe coincidence. I got in, locked the doors, drove home by a longer route. It's been over a year. I finished my degree and left food service. Still, I keep a small mirror clipped above my desk so I can see behind me. When I pull through drive-thrus as a customer, I never linger. I pass the cash, take the drink, and go fast. Sometimes, though, when the light hits the window just right, I glimpse my own reflection the way his camera must have caught it. Tired, polite, trapped in the fluorescent glare, and I wonder who's watching whom when strangers meet in the dark. Outside, the neon sign hums, washing the parking lot in pink light, and for a moment the wet asphalt looks like another lens staring back. Business travel used to make me feel capable. Boarding passes, carry-on bag, cheap suit, the illusion of motion as progress. That changed the night a stranger tried to talk me into his car at 3 a.m. I'd landed late in Denver, Colorado, after a connection delay that ran almost 5 hours. The airport was half shut by the time I reached the shuttle desk. By the time I checked into the chain hotel across the frontage road, it was close to 3. The lobby television played muted news about weather somewhere else. My plan was simple. Sleep 4 hours, catch the morning shuttle, give the presentation, go home. I remember thinking I'd earned a reward coffee for surviving the day. The room smelled of cleaner and stale air conditioning. The digital clock read 2:41 a.m. The unit wheezed once and died mid-cycle. I couldn't sleep. Jet lag, caffeine, whatever. After half an hour of tossing, I decided to walk downstairs to the vending machines for water and maybe a donut. The hallway was empty. Low yellow light, carpet patterned like static. My footsteps sounded too loud. I remember a dry thought. If I die buying chips at 2 a.m, my boss better finish the report himself. The elevator opened into the silent lobby. No clerk at the desk. The vending alcove sat beyond a set of glass doors leading to the parking lot. The machine light buzzed like a bug zapper. I fed in cash, punched a button, waited for the bottle to drop. That's when I heard the voice. "Hey man, you know how to get to the highway?" I turned. A sedan idled by the curb, engine humming low. The driver leaned out the window, smiling like we were old friends. His dome light was off, so I could barely see him. Just a silhouette in the glint of glasses. "Sorry," I said, "not from around here." He nodded but didn't drive away. "You sure? I just need a minute." The polite instinct kicked in before the survival one. I stepped closer to answer, stopping maybe 10 feet from the car. The night air was cool, almost pleasant. He waved again, motioning me nearer. Come here. GPS is being weird. That's when the first drop of adrenaline hit. The small electric certainty that something was off. The highway was literally visible from the driveway. Every other driver would have just turned right and followed the signs. I stayed where I was. It's straight ahead, I said. 2 rights and you'll see it. He laughed softly. Come show me on the map, man. I shook my head. Can't. I'm a guest here. For a moment, neither of us moved. The car's headlights stayed off. Engine still running. Then he leaned out a little farther and said, You don't have to be scared. Nobody says that unless they want you to be. I stepped backward toward the doors, keeping my face neutral. Have a good night, I said, and slipped inside. The automatic glass sealed with a soft click. Through it, I saw him grin wide, deliberate, and put the car in park. I ran to the front desk and hit the bell until a half-awake clerk appeared. I told him a guy outside was bothering guests. He frowned, stepped out to look. The car was gone. We called the police anyway. They arrived 10 minutes later, took a brief statement, said it was probably a confused traveler. Maybe it was, maybe not. They didn't check the parking lot footage until morning, and by then the night manager said the cameras had glitched. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I sat in the armchair by the window, bottle of vending machine water sweating onto my palm, staring at the spot where the car had been. Every few minutes I told myself it was nothing. Every few minutes my heartbeat argued back. When dawn came, I went to check out. The clerk asked how my stay had been. I said fine because that's what you say when the truth sounds crazy. I caught the morning shuttle and gave my presentation on autopilot. Nobody noticed anything wrong except that I drank 4 cups of coffee instead of 2. Months later, back home, I opened a folder of expense receipts and found the hotel's printed check-in form. Across the top, someone had circled my room number in black ink. I didn't recognize. The clerk swore he hadn't done it, said maybe it was a system mark. I wanted to believe that. I still do. I travel less now. When I have to, I choose hotels with indoor vending areas and 24-hour staff. People tease me for triple locking doors in nice neighborhoods. I laugh along, but sometimes, half awake in another beige room, I hear an engine low idling somewhere outside, cool exhaust drifting through a cracked window, and for a few seconds I wait for the glass to rattle, for a voice to ask if I can help with directions. I never look. I just listen until the sound fades and the air conditioner kicks back on, steady and familiar again. I've always thought travel makes you braver. New cities, new food, learning how to cross streets where nobody obeys the light. Every trip teaches you a little more about improvising. That belief lasted until the summer of 2019, when a stranger tried to herd me and my brothers out of a public park in Lisbon, Portugal. We were 3 Americans with bad accents and overconfidence. My older brother Mark had talked us into a last-minute vacation after his divorce. Just walk and eat, he'd said. That's all we were doing that night. Walking off dinner, eating gelato, arguing about who'd left the tip. The park was small, a patch of grass and tiled paths sloping toward the river. Most of the streetlights worked, except a few that blinked like they were on a timer. We were talking about flights home when I noticed 2 men sitting on a bench near the fountain. Nothing odd about them, jeans, dark jackets, but they kept glancing our way and murmuring into their phones. I told myself I was paranoid. Travelers see danger everywhere once they get tired. Still, the air felt wrong, too quiet for a Saturday night. We took a turn down one of the smaller paths. Gravel crunched underfoot, loud enough that it covered the sound of footsteps behind us until they got close. I looked back. The 2 men from the bench were following, keeping the same slow pace, one on the path, one a few yards off in the grass. Probably coincidence, Mark said, though his hand went into his jacket where he kept his phone. We veered toward the exit. The man adjusted too. The one in the grass spoke into his phone again. Eyes on us. The other smiled when I met his gaze. That smile is still what I remember. Calm, rehearsed, like he was welcoming us to something. "Let's keep moving," I said, trying to sound casual. My youngest brother Nate muttered that we were overreacting. Then a scooter engine coughed to life behind us. The sound grew fast, loud, echoing between the trees. I turned just in time to see a third man on a small motorbike cutting through the footpath, headlight off. He braked 10 feet away, blocking the route, and started yelling in Portuguese. I caught only one word, photo, then something that sounded like money. Mark raised his hands, palms out. "We don't want trouble," he said. The rider laughed and said something else, tone suddenly soft, almost friendly. The other two men slowed to join him, one still holding his phone out like he was filming us. That's when Nate swore and shoved me forward. The man on the scooter lunged, not off, just leaning enough to grab. His hand caught Nate's shoulder, fingers curling in the fabric, then slipping when Nate twisted away. The moment broke whatever politeness had been holding us still. We ran. The path forked toward the street. I could hear the scooter behind us, tires skidding on gravel. The other two shouted directions in Portuguese, syllables sharp and fast. I didn't look back again until I saw the streetlight ahead, a patch of silver safety. We burst onto the sidewalk, nearly colliding with a couple walking a dog. The scooter braked hard at the edge of the park, engine growling, but not crossing onto the street. One of the men shouted something that sounded like a curse. Then the rider revved and peeled away. The echo of the motor blended with the distant rush of the river until there was only the wind off the water. The couple stared at us. I tried to explain in half English, half panic, and they nodded slowly, pointing toward a row of police lights 2 blocks down. We jogged that way until we reached the main avenue and finally stopped. None of us spoke for a full minute. The adrenaline left us shaky and embarrassed. Mark laughed first, the kind of laugh that's really disbelief. "Guess we're not that brave," he said. Back at the apartment, we locked the balcony doors and checked the street twice before sleeping. The next morning, the park looked innocent again. Sunlight turning the fountain water gold like nothing had happened. No officers, no scooter marks, just regular people drinking coffee on the benches. We flew home that evening. At the airport security line, a man behind us was talking rapidly into his phone in Portuguese. When he laughed, I felt my stomach clench before my brain could remind me that thousands of people speak Portuguese, and only 3 had followed us through a park. Still, I've stopped calling travel brave. Sometimes it's just being lucky enough to walk away together under a working streetlight in a city that doesn't know your name. Mark still jokes that I owe him another trip, maybe somewhere quieter. Nate always answers, "Sure, but you're leading the way this time." And I can't tell whether that's confidence or a warning. My dog Bean is the reason I ever go outside after sunset. She's a small rescue mix, braver than she should be, faster than I am. Every night around 9, she sits by the door with her leash in her mouth, tail drumming against the wall like a metronome. That night, early December, on the edge of Raleigh, the air had that brittle chill that hints at frost. I promised her a short walk around the retention field behind our townhouse complex. The field used to be a soccer lot, but the city stopped mowing it. Now it's tall grass, one path beaten through the middle by people like me trying to wear a dog out before bed. A single lamp stands on the far side. Half the bulbs are dead, so the light flickers and hums like a bad dream. We started down the path. The air smelled of mud and somebody's fireplace. Bean trotted ahead, her tag clinking softly. I kept one hand in my pocket around my phone, flashlight ready. Habit from hearing too many crime podcasts. I'd seen foxes out here, once a coyote. Nothing human. Halfway across, Bean stopped ears up, nose high. Then she looked back at me and gave a low whine. I'd never heard from her before. Part question, part warning. "What is it?" I whispered, scanning the field. The stems rustled about 20 yards away. the sound of something large shifting its weight. I aimed my phone's light. The beam caught only the wavering seed heads, silver in the cold air. Then someone said her name. It wasn't a shout, not even a full voice, just a soft sing-song call. Ben. Every muscle in my body locked. The sound came from the same direction as the rustle, calm and almost playful, like someone calling a child back inside. Bean froze too, tail down. At first I thought maybe another dog owner was out there, someone who'd overheard me earlier. I raised my light again. The grass parted slightly, and a figure crouched lower, like he'd been trying to hide from the glare. "Hey," I called. "Who's there?" No answer. Just that long hush of wind over dry stalks. Then the voice again, higher this time, stretched thin. "Bean." The sound was wrong, too close, but not moving, as if the air itself were saying it. Bean whimpered and pressed against my leg. I felt the leash go tight. I should have turned and run right then, but curiosity or stupidity kept me rooted. I flicked the light left and right. For half a second the beam caught a man's face, pale, eyes wide, half hidden by a hood. He was grinning. Then he dropped out of view, the grass swallowing him whole. Adrenaline hit like heat. I yanked the leash, spun, and started running toward the subdivision lights. Bean sprinted beside me, nails scrabbling on the frozen dirt path. Behind us came one sound, footsteps breaking through stalks, fast and uneven. I didn't look back. I just ran until my lungs burned and the sidewalk appeared. Porch lights lined the row of houses ahead. The footsteps stopped the second my shoes hit concrete. I turned. Nothing. The field looked perfectly empty. Even the lamp had gone out. My hands shook so badly I could barely unlock the door. Once inside, I double-latched it and peered through the blinds. The field lay dark and flat under the moon, ordinary as ever. I called the non-emergency line. The officer on the phone asked if I could describe the man. Tall, I said automatically, though I wasn't sure. Hooded. He said my dog's name. How close were you? Too close, I said, and realized my voice was cracking. A patrol car rolled through half an hour later, spotlighting the field. They found no one. The officer told me to avoid walking alone and to stay in lit areas. I nodded even though the field is the only place without traffic noise. The next night, I tried to skip the walk. Bean wouldn't have it. She barked until I clipped on her leash. I took her only to the end of the parking lot under the street lamp, heart pounding the whole time. When the wind came up, it brushed the tall stems beyond the curb, whispering the same rhythm as that voice, and I had to fight the urge to run again. It's been months, and I still don't know what I saw or who. Maybe a vagrant, maybe a neighbor playing a cruel joke. But sometimes when I pass that field in daylight, I notice a single patch of weeds pressed flat and darker than the rest, as if something or someone had spent a long night lying there. And every few evenings right around 9, Bean walks to the door and stares out into the dark, ears up, waiting for someone to call her name again. It was a Thursday night in early spring, the kind of mild evening when you finally turn the heater off and open a few windows to smell the rain on the sidewalk. Our house sits outside Columbus, Ohio, a quiet subdivision where porch lights blink on at the same time every evening. My wife and I were watching a late rerun on the couch. The kids had gone to bed an hour earlier, and the dog snored between us, paws twitching at some dream rabbit. Then the front door opened. It didn't burst, it just swung. A steady creak, slow enough that at first I thought I'd imagined it. The sound slid into the room like a question. My wife muted the TV, and we both stared at the dark rectangle at the end of the hallway. We keep the deadbolt turned every night. I'm borderline obsessive about it. I could still see the latch turned horizontal, yet the door hung halfway open, letting in the cool smell of wet grass. "Did you?" she started. No. The dog woke and growled, not barking, just a low vibration deep in his chest. He trotted down the hall, tail stiff, and stopped short of the threshold. The porch light should have kicked on when he crossed the sensor, but it stayed black. From the couch, I could see only emptiness beyond him, a strip of night where the railing should have been. I stood, heart racing in that quiet way. Adrenaline sometimes works, where your body moves before your brain catches up. I took the fireplace poker from the stand and whispered for my wife to stay back. My voice sounded like someone else's. The dog lunged outside, barking now. I followed just far enough to see him circle the yard, hackles up. Nothing moved. No footsteps on gravel, no engine starting, no gate swinging shut, just the soft hiss of distant rain. The door had stopped halfway open, angled toward the living room like an ear. I stepped onto the porch. Who's there? Silence. Then a shape shadow against shadow slipped across the side yard toward the fence. I saw it for half a second, a vertical blur thinner than a person should be, and then it was gone. The dog barked at the fence for another minute. I pulled him back inside, locked the deadbolt twice, and shoved a chair under the knob for good measure. My wife was already dialing 911. The dispatcher kept asking if the intruder was still there, if we could describe them. I said I didn't know, because I didn't. 2 officers arrived within 15 minutes. They walked the perimeter, flashlights sweeping the wet grass. No footprints, no tool marks on the latch, nothing. One of them tried the door from outside and said the bolt might have slipped. I wanted to believe him, but deadbolts don't slip open on their own. After they left, the house felt smaller. Every creak of wood sounded like footsteps retreating. We let the dog sleep in our room that night. None of us really slept. 3 days later, the porch light worked fine when the mail carrier walked by. Over the weekend, I replaced the lock and added a chain, checked every hinge, even bought one of those magnetic alarms that chimes if a door moves an inch. I told myself it was about being thorough. My wife said maybe it was wind pressure, that kind of invisible suction that makes doors drift. I nodded because arguing would make it sound like I believed something else. A few nights later, the alarm went off. It was 11:37 p.m. I know because the chime hit just as I was glancing at my phone. 3 beeps. The ones you never hear unless the magnet separates. The door was still shut, chain latched, but the sensor said it had moved. The dog whined, pressed against the hallway wall. I turned on the porch camera through the app. The feed showed static for 2 seconds, then cleared to an empty porch. When I opened the actual door, everything was still. The air smelled faintly of rain again, even though the forecast was dry. I stood there a long time, staring at the quiet street, wondering what could move a door that's locked twice. A pressure change? Bad sensor? Or something simpler? A person who'd learned exactly how much noise to make without being caught. We never saw anyone. We never proved anything. But every night since, I hear that first slow creak in my head before I fall asleep. And sometimes, just before the dog lifts his head and listens, I'd swear I hear the sound again, the faint shift of metal, the breath of air through a gap in the frame, as if the house itself remembers someone once tried the door in the dark. I'd lived in the same ranch house for almost 15 years. Nothing ever happened on our street. The loudest sound most nights was the sprinkler timer. Maybe that's why. 2 years ago this spring, I didn't take the first knock seriously. It came just after 9 p.m. 3 sharp raps. Polite but firm. I was rinsing dishes, half watching the weather on the small TV by the sink. Through the window I could see our porch light reflecting off the storm door, but no shape behind it. I dried my hands, walked over, and called out, "Who is it?" No answer. Another 3 knocks. Same rhythm. I flipped on the porch light. A man stood on the steps, maybe mid-30s, hands clasped in front of him like he was about to pray. Khaki jacket, baseball cap pulled low. Nothing remarkable until I noticed his shoes were muddy, like he'd been walking through fields outside Tulsa, Oklahoma. "Can I help you?" I asked through the glass. He smiled too quickly. "Hey, sorry, looking for a friend. You mind if I use your phone?" My phone was visible in my hand. He pointed at it. "That one's fine." Something in his tone made my scalp tighten. "Polite words, wrong cadence," I said. "Sorry, can't do that," and stepped back. He tilted his head, still smiling. "It'll only take a second." Then he reached for the handle. The storm door latch clicked against the frame I'd locked out of habit. He tugged once, testing it. The smile stayed but flattened, like a switch turning off. "Ma'am," he said softly, "please." I backed farther into the hallway, pulse drumming in my ears. "Leaving now," I said, louder than I meant to. He stood there another full breath, then lowered his hand, nodded once as if acknowledging some rule I'd enforced, and walked down the steps into darkness. No car engine, no footsteps on gravel after that. Just gone. I called the sheriff's line. They said they'd send a deputy. By the time one arrived, the road was empty. The deputy scanned footprints on the porch and said the mud matched the ditches behind our development. He took a quick report, advised me to keep lights on and doors locked, as if I hadn't already. That night, every noise felt amplified. The refrigerator cycling, tree branches tapping the roof. I barely slept. 2 nights later, around midnight, the doorbell rang. Long press, not a single tap. My dog barked from the bedroom. I checked the porch camera feed on my phone. Blank screen. The lens had been sprayed with something opaque gray. I dialed 911. While the dispatcher talked, a new sound began. A scrape of metal along the doorframe, slow and steady like a key trying every angle. Then silence again. Patrol arrived within 10 minutes. They found footprints this time. Same tread, same mud, leading to the backyard fence and stopping. The deputy said, "Could be a drifter." They move on. He meant to calm me. It didn't work. For weeks afterward, I came home before dark, curtains drawn. Neighbors started leaving porch lights on for me. We joked about the midnight caller, though the joke wore thin fast. Spring came. Rain washed the yard clean. One morning, when I opened the blinds, I saw a muddy handprint on the outside of the glass near the lock. 5 clear fingers, no palm, angled as if someone had been steadying themselves while peering in. I didn't bother calling it in, they'd just file another report. I bought new deadbolts instead, reinforced the jambs, installed motion lights that could flood the porch white as day. It's been 2 years, nothing else has happened. Still, every evening I check the cameras before bed. Sometimes I'll catch a moth fluttering close to the lens, its shadow stretching across the door like a hand. That's when I realize the silence feels wrong, too perfect, too held, like the pause before another knock. I stand there, phone in hand, porch bright and empty, the smell of old rain still clinging to the mud that never quite washes out of the steps. When I was 12, my mom and I moved again. By then, I'd stopped counting how many addresses we'd cycled through, but she joked that the moving company should give us a punch card. "One more, kiddo," she said as boxes piled up in the driveway. She said that every time, the house was smaller than our last one, but had a huge yard that sloped toward a patch of woods. From my bedroom window, I could see a narrow path vanish between the trees. The local kids said it led to a pond where people fished, though I never saw anyone there that first week. I spent those afternoons unpacking and pretending to help, mostly just trying to stay out of Mom's way. She worked late shifts, so the evenings belonged to me. After a few days of silence in that cul-de-sac, I grabbed my bike and went exploring. The air smelled like cut grass and hot tar, the kind of smell that tells you summer's serious this time. That's when I met him. A kid a few years older was walking up the street carrying a bucket and what looked like a stick with a string on it. I stopped and asked what he had. He smiled, easy, confident, and lifted the bucket so I could see the shimmer of fishtails. "Caught him at the pond," he said. I'd never been fishing before. My whole life had been city sidewalks and small apartments. The idea that you could just pull dinner out of a pond down the road sounded like magic. He must have seen that look on my face because he said, "You want to learn?" That's how it started. His name was Brett, and he lived 3 houses down. The next morning, I showed up with a sandwich bag full of breadcrumbs, thinking that's what bait was. He laughed, not mean, just amused, and handed me a jar of worms instead. "Bread's for ducks," he said. That first day, I caught nothing but branches, and at one point my line snagged on his shirt. I apologized so many times that he finally told me to stop before I made him feel old. That was his humor, dry and a little condescending, but I didn't care. Someone finally wanted to hang out. By the 3rd trip, I was calling him my best friend. The pond was small, ringed by reeds and the constant buzz of insects. If you stood still long enough, the water mirrored the sky so perfectly that the trees looked upside down. Brett said he liked that view most when clouds rolled over because then it looked like the world might turn itself inside out. I laughed, half understanding him, half not. He taught me to dig worms, fix a line, even clean a fish. Sometimes his mom fried them for us. The smell of oil drifting across the street while we sat on their porch with paper plates balanced on our knees. Mom liked that I was spending time outdoors. She said Brett was a good influence. I believed it too, until the day the man showed up. It was late June, one of those afternoons when the sun looked pale from all the heat it threw. Brett and I were casting near the deeper part of the pond when a shout cracked across the water. "Hey, what are you boys doing out here?" A heavy-set man in khaki shorts stomped toward us, waving his arms. He accused us of trespassing, of fishing without permission. Brett shot back that it was public land, but the guy didn't care. I was ready to leave when another voice cut in. Calm, precise. "That's enough, George." Across the bank stood a tall, thin man with neatly combed gray hair and glasses. He wore a cardigan even though it was 80 degrees. The angry one muttered something and left. The man with glasses smiled at us. "You're fine," he said. "This isn't anyone's property. I walk here all the time." He introduced himself as Mr. Michaels. He seemed polite, almost scholarly, the kind of adult who asks about your grades and listens to the answer. He said he admired Brett's homemade fishing rod and asked how long we'd been coming here. When we said a few weeks, he nodded like a proud uncle and told us to keep enjoying the summer. That should have been the end of it, but he kept returning. At first, he just waved from a distance. Then he started bringing us snacks, cookies, muffins, cans of soda. "My wife baked too much," he'd say. Everything tasted incredible, better than the store stuff. It felt like we'd been adopted into some secret club of decent people. Mom never met him, neither did Brett's parents. To them, he was just a name we dropped in passing. Mr. Michaels gave us cookies. No one questioned it. By mid-July, he'd become part of our routine. Sometimes he sat with us, talking about baseball or nature, or how lucky we were to grow up near real woods instead of asphalt. Other times, he'd just stroll by, hands behind his back, humming softly. One afternoon, he asked if we had girlfriends. Brett laughed and said, "Not yet." I just shook my head. Mr. Michaels smiled. This gentle, almost sad smile. "Don't rush it," he said. "The world will try to tell you who to love. Only your heart knows." It sounded wise then. Looking back, I realized that was the first crack in the surface. The moment the conversation stopped being about fishing and started being about us. A few weeks later, Brett went to visit relatives out of state. I still wanted to fish, so I went alone. The woods felt different without him. Quieter. Every snap of a twig loud enough to make me look over my shoulder. Still, the pond was peaceful. Half an hour in, I heard footsteps on the path. Mr. Michaels appeared, holding a small basket. "Thought you might be hungry," he said. We talked while I fished. Mostly I did the talking about school, about my mom working late. He asked gentle questions, nodding in all the right places. When I mentioned that we moved around a lot, his expression changed. For a second, he looked almost stricken. Then he mumbled something about being sorry, and left abruptly. The next day he came back. This time he apologized for walking off. "You reminded me of myself," he said. I didn't handle it well. I told him it was fine. Truth is, I liked that he cared enough to explain. He talked about family not always being blood, about how sometimes you find it in the world. You can choose the people who matter, he said, like I chose my wife, like you might choose friends. It felt like advice, not warning. On the Saturday before Brett returned, I went to the pond one last time alone. Mr. Michael showed up as usual carrying lemonade. He asked if I'd thought about what he'd said about chosen family. I told him I had. He smiled and sat beside me, watching the line drift. Would you want me to be like family? He asked. Inseding det dating moropher, if fortstand here hemmagal the Streitlentory Adel. I said sure, because that's what polite kids say. He nodded, quiet for a long moment, then said something about how family shows love. Sometimes we show it by touch, he added. His voice trembled a little. Something in me froze. I didn't know why, but every instinct screamed that something was wrong. He leaned closer. Would it be okay if I stood up and walked away, cutting across the clearing toward the path home? The woods felt endless, even though the trail was only half a mile. Every step sounded too loud, every shadow too close. At home, I went straight upstairs. Mom asked what was wrong. I tried to hold it in, but everything spilled out. Words tumbling, tears following. I remember her dropping the dish towel and wrapping me in her arms. Then the sound of her voice downstairs on the phone, sharp and shaking. By the next morning, she said I wouldn't have to see him again. I never learned exactly what happened. There were phone calls, a visit from the sheriff, hushed conversations on the porch. All I know is that Mr. Michaels moved away. For weeks after, I didn't want to go near the woods. The pond felt poisoned by memory. When Brett came back, I told him what happened in the simplest way I could, just that Mr. Michaels had turned out to be bad news. Brett looked stunned, then angry. We never talked about it again. Summer ended. School started. Life filled with ordinary things. Homework, chores, the same bus ride every morning. But sometimes, walking home at dusk, I'd see a tall figure far down the street and my stomach would clench until I realized it was someone else. Years later, as an adult, I moved back to the Pacific Northwest for work. Different city, same misty air. One weekend, I drove out to the old neighborhood. Half curious, half nervous. The houses looked smaller. The woods had thinned into a manicured park with jogging trails. The pond was still there, ringed by a fence now. A sign read, "No fishing without permit." I stood at the fence for a long time, listening to kids laughing on the other side. The air smelled the same. Wet leaves, sun-warmed algae. For a second, I saw two boys sitting on a log, lines cast out, one teaching the other how to tie a knot. I blinked and they were gone. That's when I realized how quietly the dark moves. It doesn't always come snarling out of an alley or hide behind a mask. Sometimes it walks up in daylight, carrying cookies, calling itself a friend. These days I fish from docks, where the light stretches far over the water. When people strike up conversation, I'm friendly but cautious. It's not paranoia, it's pattern recognition. Because once you meet a stranger in the dark, you start to notice how many of them are out there, and you never ever fish alone again. I used to think I liked routines because they made life simple. Every evening at 6:30, I'd change into running gear, cue the same playlist, and jog the same 4-mile loop around our subdivision. The neighborhood was quiet, predictable. One of those places where people leave pumpkins on porches long after Halloween because no one steals them. I tracked everything: calories, heart rate, pace. My fitness app congratulated me more often than my boss did. My wife teased that if I ever missed a run, the satellites would lose signal. She wasn't wrong. That November evening started like all the rest. Cold air, half-lit sky, sodium orange glow spilling from the streetlights. Leaves scraped across the asphalt. I remember because I counted the crunches between songs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, At the far curve of the loop, a dark sedan rolled toward me, slower than traffic should. I moved to the sidewalk. The driver lifted a hand and waved like we knew each other. The gesture was casual, 2 fingers off the steering wheel. I didn't wave back. When I glanced over my shoulder, the car was idling at the stop sign. The driver's face was shadowed by the windshield glare. I chalked it up to coincidence. People misrecognize each other all the time. I logged my run, stretched on the porch and forgot about it. The next night, the air smelled of rain. I nearly skipped the jog, but guilt won. Same route, same playlist, same pace. Near the halfway point, headlights flared behind me. I shifted to the curb. The car slowed again. Same model, maybe the same one. The window slid down a few inches. A man's voice called, friendly and confident. Evening. My full name. He said it perfectly first and last, like he'd practiced. I froze mid-stride. When I turned, the car eased past. The driver's face was hard to see, just a shape in the dim light. "Good run tonight," he said, and the window rolled up. The sedan accelerated down the hill, taillights shrinking into red dots. For a moment, I stood there in the street, heart thudding louder than my music. Then I ripped out my earbuds and jogged home, every porch light flickering like a warning sign. My wife laughed it off. "Probably someone from work," she said, "or one of the neighbors who's seen your mail." "People don't memorize last names from mailboxes," I said. "Maybe your running app posts your name publicly." I checked. It didn't. The profile showed only initials. Still, I wanted to believe her. Logic is a warm blanket. For a week, nothing happened. I changed my route, running the inner streets instead of the perimeter. The houses were closer together, lights brighter. The normal noises, TVs, dogs, garage doors made me feel buffered. I held it up to my wife. "Wrong address," she said, reaching for it. "Don't touch it." I didn't know why I said that. We left it on the counter overnight. By morning it was gone. She swore she'd thrown it out. I never saw it again. That day, I called the non-emergency police line. The dispatcher sounded bored. "Any threats or property damage?" she asked. "No." "Then just keep an eye out. Maybe install a camera." So I did. 2. Actually, one on the porch, one over the garage. For a while, peace returned. My run stayed shorter. I started carrying pepper spray, which felt silly but comforting. Then, a week before Thanksgiving, I decided to test myself, prove it was all paranoia. I went back to the original loop. Halfway through, at the corner near the retention pond, I heard footsteps behind me, steady matching mine. I turned off my music. The steps stopped. Wind rustled the cattails. A light drizzle blurred the pavement. I told myself it was echo sound bouncing off the houses. Then a car door slammed. Headlights flared to life behind me. Same dark sedan, idling with lights off until that moment. I sprinted toward the convenience store 2 blocks away. Phone already in my hand. My fingers were shaking so hard it took 3 tries to unlock the screen. I hit 911. By the time the operator answered, the car was gone. 2 officers arrived 10 minutes later. They found faint tire tracks on the wet gravel, but nothing else. They suggested it might have been a coincidence. I showed them my running app data. Same route, same time, every night. One officer nodded slowly. "Makes you predictable," he said. "Someone could know exactly where you'll be." Predictable. The word lodged deep. I stopped running for a month. Bought a treadmill. My wife said the machine's whine was louder than my paranoia. I laughed because she was right, sort of. December came, snow covered everything, muffling the world. Each night before bed, I checked the camera feeds. Nothing unusual. Just rabbits, delivery trucks, a neighbor's kid shoveling. Then one morning, a note waited in the mailbox. Plain paper, folded twice. Inside, typed in bold letters, "Stay safe out there." No envelope, no signature. I handed it to the officer who'd filed my previous report. He frowned. Could be some kid playing around, he said. No direct threat. He suggested a neighborhood watch meeting. We had one. 12 people showed. Everyone complained about porch pirates and teens cutting through lawns. No one else mentioned a car or a note. I told myself that meant it was over. Spring returned. I missed the outside air, the rhythm of running under open sky. One evening, I went out again, different direction this time, toward the main road where traffic never slept. I passed the gas station, the grocery store, the bus stop. Nothing strange. The sky faded to blue-gray, the kind that looks almost metallic before dusk. When I reached the halfway point, a voice behind me said, "Good to see you again." I turned. A man leaned against a lamppost. Mid-40s, clean jacket, baseball cap. I'd never seen his face before, but I knew the timbre of that voice. He smiled like we were old friends. "Told you to stay safe." I couldn't move. My body knew before my mind did. Same cadence, same easy tone. A delivery truck turned onto the street, lights sweeping over us. The man stepped back into the shadow between two parked cars. By the time I blinked, he was gone. I drove the route the next day in daylight, scanning every yard. Nothing. No unfamiliar vehicles. No men matching his description. The cameras never caught him either. I changed my schedule completely. Morning workouts only. No fixed times. I quit sharing fitness data, deleted the app, replaced it with an old-fashioned notebook. Even so, sometimes I sense him near. A car pausing a beat too long at the corner. A voice behind me at the grocery line saying my name, then claiming it's a coincidence. Maybe it is. Maybe the dark just learned to speak casually. It's been 2 years. I still run, but I never repeat a route. I keep my phone ready, earbuds out, awareness switched on. The porch lights stay on all night. Friends say I'm paranoid, that nothing ever happened. They're right in the measurable sense. No attack, no proof, but I remember that voice saying my name, warm as a handshake. Every routine makes us visible. That's the lesson. The moment you stop varying your path, the dark knows where to find you. Now, when I jog past rows of identical houses, I catch my reflection in the windows. Same form, same rhythm. And I think about how easily I once could be mapped. I wave at neighbors I actually know. People whose names I've learned slowly and honestly. When strangers wave from cars, I nod, but never wave back. Because somewhere out there is a man who already knows my name, and I'll never know how he learned it. Touring makes every night feel half-dreamed. You live out of gas stations, wake up unsure which state you're in, and measure distance in hours instead of miles. That night we were in Brookings, South Dakota, a college town with one decent bar called the Wild Hare. We'd just finished a 3.5-hour set. The crowd had been good to us, rowdy in all the right ways, and by the time we hit the last chorus, everyone was stomping hard enough to rattle the neon. Loadout took forever. Cables, cases, merch tubs. By the time we were done, the rest of the band was already drifting toward the bus, chasing sleep or something close to it. I wasn't ready to turn in. Playing that long leaves a hum in your chest like you swallowed an amp, and lying down won't shut it off. So I ordered a burger and one more beer. The bartender looked half asleep. She nodded, poured, and vanished. That's when the old man sat down next to me. He looked built from another century. Creased face, sun-brown hands. A plaid shirt worn smooth at the elbows. "A great show," he said, settling onto the stool. "Appreciate it," I told him. "Don't get much live country here anymore. Not the kind with steel guitars." He ordered a whiskey and raised his glass toward me. I did the same. We talked about Hank and Cash, about songs that still sounded like work. His laugh was gravelly but kind. He asked about life on the road. I said it was equal parts freedom and lower back pain. He chuckled. "Reckon the burger'll fix one of those," he said. I told him these burgers were so greasy they could patch a roof in a pinch. He laughed, and for a minute, it was easy. Two strangers swapping stories in the quiet after noise. Then he asked if we ever broke down in the middle of nowhere. All the time, I said. Sometimes a truck stop at 3 a.m. is scarier than a haunted house. That made him grin. You ever carry protection? The driver usually packs, I said, just in case someone tries to steal the bus or the drummer. Smart, he said. Out here, you don't always get a second chance. He looked down at his glass, then said, I know something about that. He told it like a story he'd practiced. Said he'd lived in the same farmhouse 40 years, raised 5 kids there. His wife and 2 daughters died in a car crash. The sons moved away. After that, just him and the quiet. I liked the quiet, he said, until the quiet started liking me back. He meant the tweakers, the meth crowd. They stripped the county bare, stole copper from air conditioners, gas from tractors, even siding off houses. They hit my place twice, he said. First time they took an air unit. Second time they tried the barn. Sheriff said he couldn't spare anyone to watch the property, so I started sitting on the porch at night with a shotgun. He paused to sip. Didn't get much sleep that year. I pictured it. A lonely house, a single porch light, a man drinking coffee through the dark. Then one night I saw headlights crawl up the drive, he said. 2 of them, maybe 3. I fired a warning shot. They shot back. Bullets chewed the porch rails and split the door frame. I told the sheriff next day. He said I had every right to defend myself, but maybe I should go stay with kin till things cooled down. The old man swirled the ice in his glass. Thing is, I didn't have kin anymore. He smiled when he said it, but not like it was funny. He leaned closer. So I made a plan. His tone changed, the air in the bar thickening. He said he rented a moving truck and parked it beside the barn, then left town a few days like the sheriff suggested. When he came back, bullet holes pocked the truck's doors. He opened them and found 3 men inside, dead as fence posts. He said quietly, they'd tried to rob the house again. The lock had jammed. Maybe the air ran out. Maybe they turned on each other. The sheriff figured it was drugs, he said. Said they probably shot each other when the dope ran out. He took a sip and met my eyes. He archly asked if I'd done any tinkering with that lock. He let it hang. I tried to laugh. What'd you tell him? He smiled, told him no. His hands didn't shake steady as rebar. The bartender called last call. Most lights were off except one over the pool table. My drummer was arguing with the manager near the door about load fees. I thought about leaving, but the old man went on. Saddest thing, he said, is I didn't even mean for him to die like that. Just wanted to teach a lesson. Lock was old. Figured they'd bust it open easy. Guess I underestimated the metal. He laughed softly. Or overestimated the men. There was no humor in it. I said, that's quite a story, and stood. He set a hand on my arm. Firm, not rough. You believe me? Sure, I said, because lying felt safer. He looked at me a long time. Good, because sometimes the truth sounds like a lie. Then he let go. Outside, the air smelled like rain. I walked to the bus alone, gravel crunching under my boots. The lot was empty except for a flickering streetlight. My breath came in white puffs. Halfway to the bus, I looked back. He was framed in the wild hare's doorway, yellow light behind him. He raised a hand, maybe a wave, maybe not, and disappeared inside. On the bus, I lay awake, listening to the engine idle. Every few seconds, a drop of water hit the roof, sharp as a metronome. Maybe he was a drunk spinning a tall tale. Maybe none of it was true. But I kept seeing his eyes clear, unblinking, the eyes of someone remembering, not imagining. We rolled out before sunrise. The road west was empty, gray light over wet asphalt. By the time the others woke, I was driving, coffee in hand. Radio low. We stopped at a diner 3 hours later. The waitress had pink hair and called everyone Han. She refilled my mug, the heat steady against my palms. The TV over the counter played the morning news. A local anchor was talking about a cold case reopened in Brookings County. 3 men found years ago in a locked truck behind an abandoned farmhouse. No arrests ever made. The picture flashed on screen. Same kind of truck. Same number of victims. My stomach dropped. One of the guys asked if I was okay. I said the coffee was hitting me weird. He laughed and went back to his pancakes. Outside, drizzle streaked the windshield. I kept thinking about how calm the old man had been, how he never raised his voice or tried to impress me, just told his story like it was weather. And I remembered how he'd said, "Sometimes the truth sounds like a lie." We reached Minneapolis that night. Different crowd, same set list. I smiled, sang, thanked everyone for coming. But while I was up there under the lights, I kept scanning the audience for a face like his. It's been years since then. I've played hundreds of towns, met thousands of people, most of them good, a few forgettable, and one I wish I hadn't met. Sometimes, late at night when the road goes quiet, I'll glance in the rearview mirror and think I see him in the back seat. Just a shape, a hint of flannel, eyes steady on mine. I tell myself it's taillight reflection, a shadow from passing trees, but I don't check twice, because I know what happens when you give darkness a name. Some strangers talk about music and mean it. Others talk about sin and call it a story. And once you've shared a drink with one of them, you start wondering how many more are out there, waiting for someone to listen. That's the thing about the road. It's never really empty. The dark just rides along, wearing someone else's smile. I'd always imagined traveling alone would make me braver. It mostly just made me talk to strangers faster than I should have. The trip was supposed to be a week of cheap beaches and sunburn. I'd saved all year one flight, one backpack, one digital camera older than I cared to admit. The island was small enough that everyone simply called it the coast, as if the rest of the world didn't exist. The first thing I noticed stepping out of the taxi was heat, dense and salty, wrapped around everything. The second was laughter. A dozen people my age crowded the hostel courtyard, music spilling from someone's phone. A girl behind the front desk slid me a clipboard. "First time here?" "Yeah," I said. "I booked the 8-bed dorm." She smiled. "Hope you brought earplugs." The shower in my room hissed like a snake in pain. I laughed out loud at the noise, thinking of friends back home who'd warned me about hostels. By dusk, I joined the courtyard crowd, everyone drinking from plastic cups and introducing themselves twice because of the language mix. That's how I met Talia. She was a few years older, from Spain, the kind of traveler who carried herself like the world owed her good stories. She offered me a drink, rum with something red, and said, "We're going out later, come with us." I almost said no. Jet lag, new place, unfamiliar faces, but I'd promised myself to stop saying no. We hit the main street just after 9. Music leaked from every doorway. Reggaeton 90s pop, steel drums. The air smelled of lime and diesel fumes. Tourists wandered in loose herds, every bar claiming to be the real one. Talia's group was 5 people counting me. 2 Australian guys who argued about everything, a Canadian who filmed everything, and a local named Marco who seemed to know everyone. The drinks were strong. We bounced between bars until they blurred into one long hallway of light. Around midnight, Talia leaned close, shouting over the noise, "Tomorrow beach trip." "Sure," I said. "Count me in." She smiled, then suddenly frowned. Her hand dove into her bag. "Where's my wallet?" The group started searching the table and floor. Marco snapped his fingers at me. "You were sitting next to her, right?" "Yeah, but..." Talia's voice cut in. "You reached across my bag for a napkin." "I did, but not for your wallet." The others stared. I felt heat climb my neck. She found the bag zipper open, empty. It was right here. People nearby were watching. One of the Australians muttered. Could have been anyone, but the accusation had already landed. I didn't take anything. I said. Talia crossed her arms. Then where is it? I pushed back from the table, heart pounding. I'm done talking, and I walked out into the humid street, alone. The sound of music faded behind me. I followed the beach road toward the hostel, sandals slapping against damp pavement. A stray dog padded alongside, for half a block before vanishing into the dark. Halfway there, my phone buzzed a message from Talia. Sorry, found wallet in my room. My mistake. Feel stupid. Buy you drink tomorrow? I stared at the screen, half angry, half relieved. I typed no problem, deleted it, then wrote simply okay. Back at the hostel, the night clerk was asleep in a hammock. I climbed into my bunk and lay listening to the ceiling fan tick like a metronome. My mind replayed the look on her face, the certainty. Sleep didn't come easy. Morning light and hangover heat filled the dorm. Talia waved from the courtyard as if nothing had happened. Beach still on? She asked. I shook my head. Need a quiet day. Her smile tightened. Then dinner tonight. My treat. I hesitated. Sure, maybe. By afternoon, my nerves had settled. It was possible she just panicked. Travel makes people weird. I wandered the markets, bought a carved turtle I didn't need, ate shrimp from a paper plate. Every few minutes, my phone buzzed with messages from her. Dinner 8? Pier bar? Part of me wanted to ignore it. Another part didn't want to look paranoid. At 7:45, I was walking toward the pier. The bar was quieter than the night before. Ceiling fans stirred warm air carrying the smell of seaweed and grilled fish. Talia sat alone at a table by the railing, drink already in hand. You came, she said, relief in her voice. Figured I owed you a proper conversation, I said. She smiled. You were right to be angry. I felt awful. I relaxed a little, maybe that was all it was. Then she leaned forward. A friend of mine wants to apologize too. He's waiting by the dock. I followed her glance. 2 men stood near the boats, half hidden by shadow. Neither looked like tourists. Something cold moved through me. He can apologize here, I said. She frowned. They're shy. Then they can stay shy. I stood up. She reached for my wrist lightly, almost friendly. Don't be dramatic. I pulled free. The men started walking our way. I turned and pushed through the bar's side door into a narrow alley lined with crates and mopeds. My sandals slipped on the wet concrete. I heard voices behind me. Low, urgent. At the alley's end, the night breeze hit me, heavy with salt. A small market glowed ahead, lanterns swaying over stalls of fruit and clothes. I darted between tables, heart hammering. A vendor shouted as I brushed past. I spotted a uniformed officer near a food stand and ran straight to him. Words tumbled out. Accusation. Wallet. Pier. Men. He held up a hand. Calm. Slowly, he said in accented English. When I turned to point, the alley was empty. He radioed something and walked me back toward the main road. You should not meet strangers alone, he said. I'm learning, I told him. At the station, he took my statement. The translator said they'd patrol the area, but without full names, there wasn't much they could do. I gave them the hostel address, then sat in a plastic chair until sunrise. When I finally returned, the receptionist said Talia had checked out at dawn. She said to tell you goodbye, he added. I nodded, too tired to answer. That afternoon, I moved to a hotel near the airport. I locked the door twice and left the TV on for company. On the flight home, I kept replaying the week. Every laugh, every friendly offer. Every time I said yes. It felt like watching a movie where you already know the twist and can't stop it anyway. Back home, friends asked how the trip was. I said it was fine. Warm, cheap, good food. The easy answer, but I still dream about that pier sometimes. The glow of lanterns, the sound of the ocean swallowing the noise behind me. People say travel makes you worldly. Maybe. It also teaches you how easily the world can tilt when one person decides to make you the villain. Now when I travel, I still talk to strangers. I just make sure the light's good, the exits are clear, and my drink never leaves my hand. Paradise is bright enough to hide shadows, and the darkest part of night is usually the smile you believe. Too quickly. When you work nights long enough, daylight starts to feel like a rumor. For 2 years I lived by the clock and beep, and the glow of fluorescent light, moving pallets through a warehouse that never really slept. I liked the quiet, no customers, no phones, just diesel in the air, and the rattle of shrink wrap. Routine made sense. You can measure it, stack it, label it. There were 4 of us on that shift. Me, a guy named Eli, our loader Grace, and a supervisor who stayed in the office unless something broke. We called it the Skeleton Crew, fitting name. Eli was the opposite of me. Talkative, messy, always humming old pop songs over the intercom. He once said, "Man, if we ever get haunted in here, I'm out." I told him ghosts would be bored to death watching us scan boxes. That was the first week of February, the month the cameras went in. Management said they were for efficiency. Really, they were for accountability. Every bay got a pair, one pointed down each aisle, red light blinking like an unblinking eye. I didn't mind. Cameras don't lie. At least that's what I used to think. 9 p.m. start of shift. I punched in, microwaved a burrito that could probably survive fallout, and did the checklist. Dock doors locked, inventory tablet charged, forklifts fueled. Eli rolled in late with coffee for both of us, and a story about his car radio switching stations by itself. Static ghosts, I said. He laughed. Better ghosts than my alternator. By 10, we were in rhythm. Scan, lift, move, repeat. Cold air seeped through the bay doors. Our breath fogged under the lights. Around 11, the PA clicked on by itself. No announcement, just a hiss. Then silence. Grace yelled from the other end. "You hit the mic?" "Nope," Eli said. "Must be the phantom PA man." We joked about it for 5 minutes, then forgot. At 12:40 a.m., Eli called over the radio. Bay 4 looks off. Sensor lights flickering again. "Probably ballast," I said. He chuckled. "You and your ballast, I'll check it." Static swallowed the rest of his words. I waited, expecting his usual follow-up, some bad pun about electricity. Nothing. "Eli, you good?" No answer. I sighed, grabbed my scanner, and walked toward Bay 4. The motion lights overhead switched on in sequence, buzzing awake as I passed. When I turned the corner, the last light in the row blinked once and went dark. "Great," I muttered. The bay smelled of diesel and cold metal. Pallets sat half-wrapped, labels fluttering in the draft. Eli's cart was there. His gloves were on it, but not Eli. "Hey," I called. Only the sound of the fan system answered. I checked the emergency door. Still sealed. Alarm light solid red. The loading dock gate was down and locked. No footprints leading away. Just tire tracks frozen in dust. I radioed Grace. "You see Eli on your side?" "No." "Maybe he's in the restroom." "Copy." But the restroom was empty. I went to the security office. The heater clanked like it was coughing up ghosts. 4 monitors showed the bays in black and white. I rewound camera 2 to the time Eli called me. There he was, walking under the light, scratching his head. He looked up, maybe at the bulb, and waved toward the camera, grinning. Then he stepped forward, toward the next aisle. Camera 3 should have picked him up. It didn't. The frame stayed empty, just the hum of the fans and a strip of flickering light. I rechecked the timestamps. Same minute, 1 frame he's there, next he's gone. Glitch, I told myself. They installed these things yesterday. I played it again, same result. For reasons I can't explain. I rewound farther and watched myself entering Bay 4 5 minutes later. I expected to see the same empty aisle, but just before I appeared, A faint silhouette crossed the far corner, taller than Eli or maybe stretched by the camera's angle. It turned its head toward the lens, then the feed cut to static. My stomach dropped. I called the supervisor's extension. No answer. His office light was off. Grace was loading pallets at Bay 1 and hadn't heard from Eli since the radio call. At 2 a.m. she went home. She had an early class and I stayed behind to finish paperwork. The silence after she left felt heavier than usual, like the air itself was waiting. Around 4 a.m. the fans shut off for the scheduled power cycle, and the whole warehouse seemed to inhale. I told myself I'd check Bay 4 one more time before clocking out, just to prove the cameras wrong. I carried a flashlight, even though every aisle had motion lights. The beam bounced off plastic wrap and reflective tape. My footsteps sounded too loud. As I stepped between pallet stacks, the chill deepened. The air smelled faintly of ozone, as if lightning had struck nearby. Eli's radio lay on a pallet, mic side up. The metal felt warm, like it had been held recently. Eli, nothing. Then, from somewhere deep in the dark, a single footstep answered. Slow, deliberate, heavier than mine. I turned off my light. The motion sensors stayed dark. Whoever or whatever was there hadn't moved enough to trigger them. I backed away, keeping my eyes on that aisle, until I reached the security cage. Once inside, I locked it and waited for dawn. At 8, the day shift arrived. I handed the supervisor my report. He skimmed it, frowned, and said, "He probably walked out. Happens more than you think." Without tripping an alarm? Without clocking out? He shrugged. "We'll check payroll." Police came later. They took notes. Asked if Eli had problems, debts, family issues. I said he'd been fine. They called it a voluntary disappearance. The company replaced both cameras and scrubbed the footage as corrupted. They told us not to discuss it. I quit 2 weeks later. Sometimes I still dream in that washed out black and white, the flicker, the echo, the empty space where someone should be. When a light bulb buzzes before dying, my heart jumps. I took a day job. Sunlight feels strange on my skin. At the grocery store, I'll catch a glimpse of a tall man in my peripheral vision. Safety vest, gloves, walking toward an aisle. And my chest tightens until I look again and he's gone. Maybe Eli left. Maybe he walked out into the night, caught a ride, started over. But part of me knows I never heard the door alarm. Sometimes people don't leave. Sometimes they just fade where the cameras can't follow. The warehouse still runs 24 hours. If you drive past after midnight, you'll see the lights humming steady as ever. Inside, it's all routine again. Scanners beeping, forklifts rolling, red LEDs blinking in the dark. Between bays 3 and 4, there's a strip where the lights take half a second longer to come on. That's the part I never walk through. Because the dark there isn't empty. It's just quiet, waiting for someone to notice. Most people think guarding an art museum at night must be lonely. It is, but it's also orderly, and order keeps you sane. I've worked the night shift at the Harkwell Museum for 12 years. My job is to keep watch while everyone else sleeps, check sensors, patrol the galleries, log anything that beeps, flickers, or hums wrong. The building itself feels alive, like it exhales between the marble walls and the sheets of glass. The day crew calls it eerie. I call it peaceful. The process always begins the same way. Closing hour smells like polish and air conditioning, and by 11 p.m., the meticulous routine of the first sweep begins. The last tourists have filed out, and the lights dim to the overnight setting. Amber tracks along the floor, low enough to protect the paintings. I do my first sweep. Lobby, atrium, sculpture hall, then the portrait gallery. The portraits are the hardest to pass. So many eyes, all fixed forward. I joke to the interns that the real danger isn't thieves, it's vending machine sandwiches. Tonight's dinner, one of those. The bread has the texture of printer paper, but it keeps me awake. Each checkpoint beeps as I tap my key fob. The hum of HVAC and the click of my boots fill the emptiness. By midnight, everything is routine. Sensors armed, camera stable, coffee cooling beside the monitors. I write in the log, 000, all zones clear. Everything remained quiet until just after 1 o'clock in the morning, when the ordered silence of the control room was broken by a familiar, yet unwelcome sound, the chirping of the console. At 01:12 a.m., it reported Zone 4 motion, Portrait Gallery B. I roll my chair closer, expecting a glitch. The infrared overlay shows a faint outline near the middle of the room. Great, I mutter. A moth the size of a hawk. Still, rules are rules. I take the flashlight, badge the door, and step inside. The metal casing feels warm in my hand. Its weight steadies me. The temperature drops 3 degrees. You can feel it even through uniform sleeves. Nothing moves. The beam catches varnished canvas, gold leaf, the pale shimmer of eyes behind glass. A wooden chair used by docents sits slightly turned as if someone had pushed off it to stand. I don't remember it facing that way. I sweep the light across the walls. One portrait, a 19th century naval officer, seems angled differently, eyes no longer out to sea but toward the door. Optical illusion, I tell myself. Paintings shift with shadows. Still, I right the chair and log the event. 01:17 a.m., Zone 4 false motion, furniture displacement. My instinct was to dismiss it, but the subtle shift in the naval officer's gaze forced me back to the security office to review the recorded footage. The cameras record in grayscale at night, grainy but clear enough. At 11:44 a.m., the gallery is empty. One frame later, a flicker light catching on dozens of small reflective surfaces. The officer's portrait turns slightly toward the sensor. I lean closer, frame by frame. The shoulders stay fixed, but the eyes track left, then return forward when I enter. My coffee tastes metallic. I replay twice, then pull feeds from other galleries. In each, the motion sensors blink once, exactly when the camera angle would place them inside of a portrait. I cross-check temperatures, a dip of 3 degrees per trigger. No bugs, no drafts, just paintings watching back. I write in the maintenance log, half joking, 02:03 a.m., gallery optics responsive. The odd behavior demanded closer observation, so around 2:30 a.m., my professional curiosity gave way to a strange form of acceptance as I began correlating the sensor triggers with the art. I walked the west wing with the flashlight off, letting the dim floor lights guide me. Each time I pass a portrait, the sensor above its frame clicks softly, the armed light flashing green as if to greet me. I whisper, "Evening, folks." The sequence follows me down the corridor. Blink, pause, blink. In the Rococo hall, a woman in lace looks over her painted shoulder toward the security camera. The camera light blinks in time. The handrail under my glove feels warm, almost pulsing. I know better than to panic over patterns. Systems like routine. Maybe I'm anthropomorphizing code. Still, I start speaking to them the way guards talk to stray cats. Making rounds too? Keep an eye on things for me. The sensors fall quiet after that. The shift toward dawn found me back at the monitor, examining the security recordings, not as evidence of an intrusion, but as confirmation of a new pattern of activity. At 03 a.m., I cued playback again. The night vision glare gives every canvas a faint halo. On screen, as I walk out of frame, the portraits seem to follow until the feed times out. 1. A small self-portrait by an unknown artist tilts imperceptibly when the lights dim. When the motion triggers again, the tilt resets. I print the sensor log. 14 activations, all matching portrait zones. Then I notice an extra line, 03:12 a.m. Motion control room, occupied. The camera behind me shows my chair empty. I'm standing right there watching it. Static eats the frame for 2 seconds, then clears. The chair rocks once. I save the file to a thumb drive. By 4 o'clock, With the strange events logged and filed away, I performed the final, most peaceful part of my shift, having now fully embraced the quiet partnership of the night. At 04 a.m., the city outside starts to gray at the edges. I walk the galleries one last time. The portraits are calm again, light pooling on varnish like shallow water. The naval officer faces the window once more. The Dawson's chair is aligned perfectly to its tape marks. Before leaving, I whisper, "Good work tonight." The sensor above his frame blinks twice. Acknowledgement or coincidence. Either way, I log it. 04:57 a.m. Final sweep, after hours movement. Artistic. That was 6 months ago. Now I make it a habit to greet each room aloud when I start my shift. The cameras behave better that way. Fewer false alarms. Once, during a storm, the system went dark. When the lights returned, every portrait faced the security office as if checking that I was all right. I nodded to the monitors and went back to work. When people say museums sleep at night, I know better. They keep watch, same as I do. So I keep the lights low, the records honest, and let them look back. It's their museum too. And sometimes when the halls are quiet enough, we keep each other company. Strangers in the dark. You get used to the night in this job. The sirens echo off empty streets. The smell of diesel and sanitizer. The quiet ride back to the bay while everyone else sleeps. I've been a paramedic 15 years. Night shift suits me. No traffic. Fewer spectators. The city stripped down to essentials. My partner Soto says I like ghosts because they don't talk back. Maybe he's right. That week started like any other. Check the rig. Top off fuel. Test the lights. Drink coffee strong enough to chew. By 11 p.m. we were rolling out from Station 6 under sodium lamps. The ambulance white as bone. Dispatch is pushing that new software again, Soto said, tapping the console. Map lady already butchered 3 street names, I answered. He laughed. She's fluent in wrong turns. Our first run was routine. Diabetic low at a 24-hour gas station. We handed the guy off, reset the cot, and hit standby near the industrial park. The city smelled of wet asphalt and fryer grease. At 12:18 a.m., the radio cracked alive. Dispatch, Unit 6A, respond code 2, possible pedestrian collapse, corner of 9th and Roebling. Copy that en route, I said. 5 minutes later, we rolled into a dark lot behind Ridge Supply. Floodlights off, chain link gate half open.
Don't like it,
Soto muttered. We parked with beams on low. The lot was empty except for a pallet of shrink-wrapped boxes and a single shopping cart. No patient, no bystanders. Then I spotted it. Used gauze, an open AED case, wrappers flattened by rain. Someone beat us here. No other units assigned, Soto replied, scanning his tablet. I keyed the mic. Dispatch, confirm location. Lots clear except prior treatment debris. Dispatch. Negative, Unit 6A. No call logged for that address tonight. Static. We bagged the waste, noted the time, 12:29 a.m., and cleared scene. 2 hours later, we were halfway through bad coffee when the tone hit again. Dispatch. Unit 6A, Code 2, shortness of breath, 417 East Clay. Routine. We turned onto Clay Street, siren off. The porch light at 417 was on. Door cracked. Inside, no one. The couch cushions were damp. A BP cuff on the floor. An oxygen tank still hissing low. A half-filled patient report form lay on the coffee table. Our agency's format. My name already printed. Soto's signature at the bottom. You sign this, I asked? He shook his head. The handwriting matched ours. We took the form back to the rig. Timestamp 2:14 a.m. Exactly when dispatch pinged us. Maybe someone cloned our unit ID. Then they cloned our handwriting too. He tried dispatch again. The line clicked twice. Went dead. By 2:30, the system showed us available in quarters. Neither of us had changed the status. We sat in the cab, windows fogged, watching the digital clock climb. At 3:07, the tablet flashed another address, Highway Shoulder near exit 16. No audio, just text. Possible rollover, one ejected. We looked at each other. We answer it, he asked? I nodded. Habit beats fear. 15 minutes later, our lights swept over the guardrail. Tire grooves bit into gravel, then stopped mid-slope. No vehicle. An orange safety cone stood at the edge, reflective band glinting. I walked closer. The letters 6A were scrawled on it in marker. We drove to the hospital to clear our heads. The ER bay smelled of antiseptic and burnt coffee. The charge nurse looked up. "You guys again?" "Again," Soto said. "Same patient. Low sugar guy from the gas station. You brought him back around 1. We haven't been here since midnight." She frowned. "Your names are on the admit. Same badge numbers." Our stretcher, parked outside, was spotless but damp, as if recently wiped down. We didn't argue. Back at the bay, we filed what we could. 3 calls, 0 patients. The system accepted every entry but shifted the times 5 minutes earlier. I printed the reports, the timestamps realigned. I didn't show Soto. He leaned on the rig, rubbing his eyes. Think maybe there's another crew running our patch? Some overflow unit? Maybe. He stared across the dark lot where our reflection shimmered on another ambulance. Same model, same decals. For a moment I thought something moved inside its cab, then just my own mirrored face. We kept working. That's what you do. The next week the phantom calls came twice more, always between 1 and 3 a.m. Always the same outcome. Scene already cleared, supplies missing, saline bag here, airway kit there. One night I found a folded patient wristband on our dashboard. Printed name, A. Soto. Birth date off by 2 years. He studied it, then dropped it into the sharps container. Maybe they need it more. Friday morning. Dawn bleeding over the city. We rolled into Station 6. The bay smelled of exhaust and wet pavement. So, to cut the engine, resting his palm on the still warm steering wheel. We telling the captain? I shook my head. Tell him what? We keep showing up to help people who don't exist. The radio crackled faint dispatcher tone. Dispatch, Unit 6A. Respond, pedestrian collapse. 9th and Roebling. The exact first address. Soto exhaled. Guess it's our turn again. I flipped the lights. Let's make good time. We reached the lot at 6:02 a.m. Sunlight gray on concrete. The pallet was gone. In its place sat a single orange cone, our number fading on the side. The air smelled like rain, though it hadn't rained in days. I knelt, touched the concrete, still damp. Somewhere down the block, an ambulance siren rose, faint and familiar, heading our way. We waited, listening. It never appeared. The sound just circled, distant and patient. Finally, I stood. Clear. We logged the call anyway. Procedure matters. That was 2 years ago. I'm still on nights, still running code 2s across the city. Soto transferred north. The phantom calls slowed, though sometimes I hear the alert tone hiding in the radio hum. When it happens, I pause, listening for the address. Then I check my mirrors. If I see taillights that match mine exactly, I nod once and keep driving. Whoever they are, they're doing good work. There are worse things than sharing the road with strangers in the dark. I drove nights for 2 years and liked the quiet, the miles between voices. The car became its own small world. Heater hum, dashboard glow, the wipers marking time. People think rideshare work is dangerous because of passengers. The truth is, it's the waiting that gets to you. Hours alone with your reflection in the glass can make anything look like a face. I kept rules. Never pick up off app. Keep the doors locked until the name matches. Confirm destination aloud. Those habits made the dark predictable, and predictable meant safe. That February night was slow rain without thunder, the city half asleep. I'd made $34 by midnight when the app pinged a new request. Pickup, S. Hale, outside a diner, 10 miles past the city limit. Surge pay. I tapped accept. The steering wheel trembled faintly from the idling engine as I turned off the main road. Warm air pushed from the vents, mixing with the cold smell of rain-soaked asphalt. The diner's neon was half burned out. The sign just said Einar. Steam rose from roof vents. A figure stood under the awning, coat collar up, head tilted so I couldn't see much. I rolled to the curb, headlights painting the wet asphalt silver. The app chirped, "You've arrived." Before I could unlock the doors, the passenger pulled the handle and slid in behind me. No greeting, just a faint trace of old cologne. "Evening," I said. "You're S. Hale in?" A pause. "Yes." Headed to, I glanced at the screen. "Harbor Road?" He said, "You already know." The route line was highlighted, already accepted. I chalked it up to the app preloading. Still, it felt like an answer to something I hadn't asked. The first mile was silence, except for rain on the roof and the rhythmic squeak of the wipers. I kept to well-lit streets until the GPS suggested the bypass. It shaved 7 minutes off, so I took it. The passenger finally spoke. "You don't usually drive this late." I checked the mirror. His face stayed in shadow, but his eyes caught the dash light. Gray or green, hard to tell. "How'd you know that?" "You check the clock a lot," he said. "Tells me you'd rather be home." I laughed once. Who wouldn't? He smiled, small and deliberate. A billboard slid past, its bulbs flickering. The GPS stuttered, spinning the map before snapping back. "Signal's bad out here," I said. "It's fine," he replied. "You're on the right road." The app rerouted itself, though I hadn't touched it. The new line traced backward for a quarter mile, then curved through side streets I didn't recognize. I slowed. "Did you change the destination?" "No." He sounded amused, not confused. "Mind if I pull over and refresh this?" He leaned forward, the seat creaking. "Don't stop yet, we're almost there." The word we landed halfway between promise and warning. The bypass narrowed into a 2-lane industrial road lined with warehouses. Sodium lights blinked out one by one as we passed, until only the car's beams cut through drizzle. He said, "You grew up near here?" "No, sir." "You did." "I moved to the city 5 years ago." He nodded like a teacher who already knew the answer. "Then maybe I'm thinking of someone else." I checked the mirror again. For a heartbeat, it showed only the back seat empty. I blinked hard. He was still there when I glanced over my shoulder, collar higher than before. At 1:10 a.m., the map froze completely. A red banner flashed GPS lost. I turned down the radio to think, and in that thin silence he said, "You can turn off the music if you want." "It's already off," I said. He chuckled softly. "Good. I like hearing the road." My throat went dry. "I'm pulling into the next gas station." He didn't answer. 2 minutes later, headlights ahead shimmered through rain. A parked car under an overpass. I slowed. The other car's lights blinked once, like a signal. I glanced in the mirror. The back seat was empty again. Both rear doors were locked. The interior light hadn't triggered. I pulled into the gas station lot, engine idling, heart in my throat. The trip still read in progress. No cancellation, no fare. Only a blank profile picture and the comment field pulsing as if someone were typing. Then it stopped, replaced by a single line. "Thanks for the ride." I stayed there until dawn. The clerk eventually came out to check if I was okay. I told him I'd just finished a long drive. He pointed out there hadn't been rain in an hour. My seats were damp. Later that morning, I emailed support. They said no user named S. Hale existed. The trip log contained no GPS data, Just start and end times matching my dashcam footage exactly. I watched that video once. At pickup, the back door handle moves, the door opens, but the seat behind me stays empty the whole ride. I deleted the file and sold the camera the next day. I still drive sometimes, but only mornings now. The car feels different in daylight, like a room cleaned too well, stripped of warmth. The rides are normal again. Commuters, students, small talk about weather and gas prices. Yet every so often the app pings a request that disappears before I can tap accept. When it happens, the screen flickers to a name field already filled in. S. Hale. Once I even heard the notification tone from the passenger side speaker instead of the phone. I pulled over, pulse hammering. Nothing was there, but the seatbelt sensor blinked red for a few seconds, as if someone had just gotten out. I don't tell this story to scare people off the job. I tell it because we spend our nights carrying strangers through darkness, and never stop to ask if the road runs both ways. Most passengers leave a rating. A few kind words, one didn't have to. The message still sits at the bottom of my inbox. Timestamped 1:15 a.m. Thanks for the ride. Now when the rain starts and the streets go quiet, I leave the app closed. I drive home in silence, headlights carving a narrow cone of certainty ahead. Behind me, the dark fills back in, mile by mile, erasing everything we just passed, except the faint impression that someone is still sitting there, watching the road unwind. Because sometimes the dark doesn't chase you, it just rides along, polite and patient, waiting for the next pickup. People think cleaning crews work in silence, but a building talks if you stay long enough. Pipes tick, vents sigh, lights hum when they warm. You learn what sounds mean normal. I started nights at City Services Tower in 909. Same uniform, same route 22 floors, one basement, mop from east to west, clock out by 5:12 a.m. The pay wasn't great, but routine makes up for a lot. By the time this happened, I'd been alone on shift for 2 years. The daytime staff knew my name mostly from the logbook. B. Harper cleaned, clocked, peed. Then 1 week the marks changed. Monday for day. Folky Joe on pulled away. 10 o'clock check-in. Badge swipe. Elevator hum. The lobby marble still smelled faintly of lemon polish from Friday. Downstairs, the vending machine clicked through its loop, trying to decide if it still had power. I bought the turkey sandwich that tastes like despair, and ate half while the floor buffer warmed up. When I opened the closet for the mop cart, the clipboard already had 2 initials in today's date box, mine and another BH written in the same looping pen stroke. The mop handle felt cold through my gloves. For a second I thought I'd lost track of days, but yesterday's slot was signed once. I laughed under my breath. Either someone's stealing my handwriting or I'm sleepwalking. Tuesday. I reached the records department early, but the trash cans were already emptied. The liners had been replaced perfectly. No wrinkles. That room's my benchmark. First stop every night. Same order. I checked my watch, 10:42. The mop bucket water was warm, but the handle bone dry. Maybe someone from day shift stayed late. Still, I wrote a note in the margin of the log. Check automatic timers cleaners. When I came back an hour later, the note was gone, the paper smooth, no impression of writing left. Wednesday. Before starting, I set a paper clip on the break room table and folded a rag twice on top of the maintenance cart. At 12:15 a.m., I came back from floor 14. The paper clip was gone, the rag folded the other way. I checked the hallway cameras from the tiny security office window. The screens were grainy, still analog. At 12:02, the monitor labeled B14 flickered, showing a cart rolling out of the elevator. The figure pushing it wore a cap like mine, same shoulders, same height. But the badge log listed only one entry, mine at 9:59 p.m. I told myself I'd hit rewind wrong. The janitorial closet smelled faintly of soap and something else. Metallic, like fresh air off an elevator cable. Thursday, the supervisor texted to compliment my incredible efficiency, said the floors gleamed. I hadn't buffed them yet. That night I started earlier, wanted to catch whoever it was. By 11:30, I was in the sub-basement, where the boilers hiss behind chain link cages. The air there stays 50 degrees even in August. Half the fluorescent bulbs buzz like wasps. I replaced 2, humming to myself the way I do when the silence gets too big. From the far aisle, the same tune hummed back soft, a half beat behind. I froze. Steam valves clicked. Then wheels squeaked. The slow roll of a cart. Maintenance, I called. Anyone down here? The sound stopped. When I turned the corner, the space was empty except for my reflection in the metal door of the boiler. Faded orange vest. Flashlight trembling. On the service table sat a thermos. My name was written on masking tape across the lid. It was still warm. I left the thermos where it was and locked the boiler door from the outside. Upstairs, I tried calling the supervisor, straight to voicemail. I filled out the nightly checklist in the closet, hands shaking slightly. When I signed my initials, there was already a signature for Thursday. Same ink, same loop. The building settled around me. Pops in the pipes. Elevator cable sighing. Every sound felt newly deliberate, like something breathing between walls. Friday, I almost called off, but curiosity won. The elevators run slower at night. You can feel the weight of their emptiness. I rode to the top floor and started down, lights flicking on ahead of me, one by one. Somewhere below, a second set followed the same rhythm. When I reached floor 8, both patterns merged, every other fixture blinking in perfect alternation, a slow strobe guiding me down the hall. I followed it to the stairwell. The door was ajar, though I never leave it that way. A faint scent of floor wax hung in the air. Fresh, sharp. At the bottom landing lay the same paperclip I'd set out days earlier, polished clean. I didn't touch it. Saturday, by morning I'd made peace with the idea that maybe the building just wanted company. The city runs too many properties to pay for a second night cleaner. But if someone or something decided to help, who was I to complain? Still, I changed one habit. Instead of whistling, I listened. I left a second cup by the coffee maker each night. Sometimes it's half full when I come back. My supervisor says my productivity is doubled. Whatever you're doing, he told me, keep it up. I nodded and didn't mention that some nights the clipboard already reads complete. Before I start, I've stopped trying to catch the other worker. I just work around them. Last night I signed out at 5:12 a.m., like always. As the elevator doors closed, I glanced at the camera lens above the panel, tiny red light blinking. In the reflection, I saw the janitorial cart parked in the lobby. My cart, and behind it, someone pushing it toward the storage closet. The door shut before I could see more. Maybe the city finally hired help. Maybe I'm seeing what years of fluorescent buzz can do. Either way, when I come in now, I start with a quiet evening before turning on the lights. It feels polite, and every morning, the thermos on the boiler table is still warm, steam fogging its rim just enough to prove someone's still there. Working the same shift, keeping the same hours, doing the same job, I still clock in alone. But the building hasn't been quiet in a long time. They teach you in trucking school that the best sound in the world is a running engine. To me, it's more than that. It's proof the world still wants to move. I've been driving nights for 23 years, mostly freight between Kansas City and Denver. The run's straight, flat, and empty enough to make a man start talking to the dash just to hear another voice. The drive started, as always, with the mundane rituals of the night shift. I start this one at a way station outside Topeka, 11 p.m. sharp. The inspector yawns, waves me through, and I park long enough to kick tires and top off coffee. It's black and viscous, half oil, half comfort. The truck's name, painted small under the window, is Lillian, after my mother. She hated that I took this job, said the road would sand me down. Maybe it did. The sky's clean, wind out of the west. I pull onto I-70 and let the Hemmons settle behind my ears. Tack steady CB on channel 19 for traffic and weather. There's a rhythm to long hauls. Check mirrors, sip coffee, glance at odometer, breathe. Every sound has its place. Engine note, wind slap, wiper squeak. After a while, it's like sitting inside a heartbeat. I held that rhythm for the first hour, letting the engine and the wind become a kind of steady heartbeat, until the airwaves suddenly decided to speak back. Near Salina, the CB crackles, normal skip noise from high clouds, then a sharper click. The mic feels rough and warm in my palm. The button gives a solid little snap. Breaker 19. Anybody westbound? Routine enough. I thumb the mic. Westbound clear. Mile 258.
Static.
Then copy that, Lillian. Hearing the truck's name freezes me. Nobody should know that it's painted small. And my call sign's Dust Dog. Say again. Good run tonight, keep her between the lines. The voice is low, male, calm. I check the GPS signal. Fine. Another burst of snowed out words. Detour 29. Watch the bridge. I frown. Interstate 29? That bridge washed out in 87. I log the time, 12:43 a.m., and the channel, though it's always 19. Flip to 21 DAWs. Dead. Back to 19 DAWs. Silence. I tell myself it's ionospheric bounce. Old chatter caught in the clouds. Still, my palms sweat on the wheel. The static swallowed the voice, leaving me alone with the impossible question of how anyone knew my truck's name. But the strange transmission soon started again, forcing me to pull off the road for a moment of quiet reflection. Around 2 a.m., I cross into Nebraska. The plains are black glass. Stars hang low enough to bend the truck's shadow. Channel 19 stays silent until 2:17. Then a woman's voice, calm, listing exits that don't exist. Rest area after Miles Junction. Westbound left side. There hasn't been a Miles Junction since 92. You'll see the diner lights, Carl. Hearing my name hits harder than caffeine. I never gave it on air tonight. Who's calling? Static rolls like surf. Then, same as always, keep the coffee warm. I pull off at the next truck stop. The attendant eyes me over his phone. Radio acting weird? I ask. He shrugs. Man, nobody uses CB anymore. Probably ham guys. I nod. Buy a refill. Sit back in the cab. The cup burns through its sleeve, grounding me. At 3 a.m. the voice returns, slower. Eastbound tanker, do you copy? That's a negative, I answer. Copy anyway, the voice says and laughs. A road-worn sound I've heard in diners my whole career. Dispatcher later confirms clear weather and 0 trucks near my ping. I don't mention the voices. Despite my attempts to rationalize the voices, ionospheric bounce, old ham operators. The farther west I drove, the more personal and insistent the messages became, transforming into the mile marker ghosts of the long-haul past. The farther west I drive, the clearer they get sentences every 20 miles, like mile marker ghosts. Rain's holding off this time. Watch for elk near Cimaraniv. Tell Lillian thanks for the lift. Each land's gentle, almost familiar. At 4:40 a.m., static thickens and the cab lights dim. The squelch light glows steady. You're doing fine, Carl. Mile 302 looks good tonight. Mile 302, where Lyle Harris jackknifed back in 93. I helped clear that wreck. I pull onto the shoulder, hazards blinking. The prairie wind sounds like slow surf. Appreciate the update, I say into the mic. Anytime, we still run nights too. Then only white noise. The final message arrived as the sky began to surrender to the coming day, closing out the mysterious communication with a respectful acknowledgement of my efforts. By 5:30, the sky bleeds gray. The world starts existing again. silos, fences, one stubborn barn light. At 6:12 near the Colorado line. Westbound, you're clear to Denver. Thanks for keeping watch. The transmission fades like a sigh. I key the mic. Copy that. See you next run. No answer. Just faint hum. Tires on a road that isn't there. I leave channel 19 open. Volume low. It's hiss now, but it sounds like company. Sunrise spills across the dash. Dust drifting in the beam. After 30 years, you learn that night work isn't about distance. It's about being one of the few awake while the world talks to itself. So I keep driving. Sometimes the radio crackles once, like someone clearing their throat before speaking. I smile, thumb the mic, and say, Breaker 19 still here. Because out here the lanes are long, the sky wider than scent, and there's comfort in knowing we're all still calling back. Strangers in the dark. I work from home, which sounds peaceful until you realize how quiet a cul-de-sac can get when everyone else is gone. By 4 in the afternoon, the street outside my living room window looks like a model display. Same parked cars, same trimmed hedges, not a single person moving. Most days, the only sounds are the refrigerator cycling, and my neighbor's wind chime hitting one lazy note over and over. I used to think it was comforting. Now it makes my stomach tighten every time it rings. It was late October, the kind of cool day where dusk sneaks in early. I'd finished my assignments, microwaved leftover soup, and half-watched old alien documentary clips on TV. I was laughing at myself for believing any of it, when someone knocked on the door. It wasn't the gentle, neighborly tap people use when they want to borrow sugar. It was 3 solid, deliberate knocks that rattled the glass in the frame. I glanced at the feed from the camera I'd hidden in the wooden canopy above the porch. A little project after a package thief hit the neighborhood. On the screen stood a woman I'd never seen before. Perfectly dressed, hair sprayed into a helmet, jewelry catching the weak daylight. She was holding a dog leash looped and slack in her hand. No dog attached. I opened the door halfway. Can I help you? The woman's expression shifted like she'd expected someone else. Her eyes swept past me into the hallway behind. Then she asked flatly, "Where's Margaret?" I blinked. "No Margaret here." "Yes, there is," she said, voice clipped and certain. Her knuckles tightened around the leash. I started to give the usual neighborly smile, the one that says you've got the wrong house. But the look on her face stopped me. She wasn't confused. She was angry. "This is number 12, she said, reciting my address exactly. "You're lying." The air between us changed. I stepped back enough to angle the door, keeping half my body behind it. "Ma'am, I think you've got the wrong—" "What have you done with her?" she hissed. The question came out so sharp it cut through every rational thought I had. I'd lived in this house for 20 years. The previous owner was an older man named Henry, who'd moved to Florida. No Margaret anywhere in that timeline. She took a sudden half-step forward, wrapping the leash around her fist like a handle. The metal clasp clicked. Self-defense class memories flickered through my head. Distance, doorframe, escape route. I told her to step back and that I was calling the police. She didn't move until I reached for my phone, then slammed her wrapped fist into the glass panel. The frosted window cracked from center to edge. She didn't flinch. Blood smeared across the break, bright and unreal. I slammed the door and turned the lock. For several minutes she stayed outside, shouting the name Margaret. When the police finally arrived, she was gone, leaving only a bent trash bin and streaks of red that looked like paint until you leaned close. The officers took my statement, nodded at the footage, and promised to keep an eye out. That phrase always sounds like protection until you realize it means they won't be back. That night, I moved the knife block closer to the door, just out of sight from the window, and slept with the hallway light on. I woke every hour convinced I'd heard the gate. A week passed. 2. I began to believe it had been a one-off breakdown. Some local confusion. Maybe a lost dog after all. Then one night, a little after midnight, I heard a car door slam. My stomach knew before my head did. I muted the TV and looked out through the blinds. A dark station wagon sat at the end of the driveway, engine off, no headlights. The gate creaked open. She was back. The night vision feed turned everyone's eyes black, and seeing her stare up into that lens was worse than the first time. "Shut that racket off and come out here," she yelled. The TV had been whisper quiet. There was no way she could have heard it. I dialed 911 again, voice steady until the dispatcher told me to wait and call back if it got worse. So I waited, standing by the door, phone shaking in my hand. She kicked over my bins again, shouting words I couldn't catch, and a neighbor's porch light blinked on. He came outside in a robe and talked to her from across the fence. I watched their shadows move while my heart slammed against my ribs. Eventually she left with him still calling after her, walking away as calm as if she'd finished an errand. By the time the police arrived, the street was empty. Days later, my neighbor told me she'd said the same thing. "Where's Margaret? What's he done with her?" He hadn't written down her license plate. I thanked him anyway. For almost a month, I tried to logic my way through it. Maybe Margaret was her dog. Maybe she'd lost it through the hedge behind my property, the one with the hole I'd been reporting to the council for years. I almost convinced myself of that until she returned again 3 in the morning, tapping on my bedroom window. The sound was soft, deliberate. Tap, tap, tap. I could hear her muttering through the glass, too quiet to make out. The voice that had lived in my head since that first day. I grabbed my phone, then froze. The surveillance camera showed only static. Later, in daylight, I found the lens sprayed black, a thin mist of paint over the glass. For a long time I stood there, listening as she circled the house, knocking on different windows. Every creak of the floorboard under my feet sounded like an invitation for her to find me. Finally, I shouted through the door, "Is Margaret your dog?" Silence. I waited another hour until the horizon started to gray. When I finally opened the door, the air was damp and cold, the gate closed tight even though I'd heard no metal scrape. On the siding, someone had spray painted one word in looping letters, LIR. Beneath it lay the dog leash, coiled neatly like a gift. I repainted the wall the next day, but left a patch beneath the porch light where a faint outline still shows through. Some nights I catch myself staring at that spot, waiting for a car to idle at the curb. I've stopped reporting strange sounds. The police never found her, and though I tell myself she moved on, every time the wind chime hits that same single note, I glance at the camera feed just to make sure the porch is still empty. Hospitals are built for daylight. At night, they turn into something else. Machines whispering to each other under fluorescent skies. That's when the cleaners come out. I've worked nights at St. Mary's Regional for 15 years. The badge says Environmental Services Technician, but I tell people I'm the one who makes the place smell like lemon when everyone's gone. If I do my job right, no one remembers I was there. My shift starts 11 p.m. sharp, with the predictable rhythms of the hospital, the sighs of the ventilators, the clicks of pumps, and the low hum of the nurses' shoes whispering past. I clock in by habit. No supervisor after 10, but the machine beeps anyway. Locker room smells of soap and bleach. My partner Terrence called out sick again, so I'm covering 2 wings, double work, double coffee. The cafeteria brew tastes like it's been filtered through despair, but caffeine is caffeine. I like the rhythm. Mop cart wheels squeak every 5th turn, checklist clipped to my belt, gloves snapping tight. The cool steel handle steadies me before every corridor. By 11:45, I'm in Ward D, orthopedics. Patients asleep, monitors blinking green. The air smells of antiseptic and wax. Everything's as it should be. At 12:30 a.m., I reach the North Hall. Room 312 is first on my list. Vacant. Ready for cleaning. I push the door open, but my routine immediately breaks. The room was already spotless and waiting. The bed's already made. Linen's tight enough to bounce a coin. Chart filed, floor gleaming. My reflection stares back from the polished tile. The mop's dry. No footprints. On the tray, a folded hospital gown, freshly pressed. The sheet is still warm. I touch it once, out of reflex. The cotton holds heat like someone just left. Back at the closet, I check my logs. No one signed for linens tonight but me. Maybe day shift doubled back, I mutter, writing 12:46 a.m., room 312 pre-cleaned, likely overlap. Still, it feels like the room cleaned itself and wanted me to notice. I dismiss the initial warmth of room 312 as an isolated mistake, but when I moved to Ward C around 1:30 a.m., I realized the meticulous cleanliness was not an isolated incident. Hallway gleams mint green under low light. Room 408, already vacuumed, bin emptied, corners squared like inspection day. Cribboard shows the patient discharged that morning. The pillow has a shallow dip, as if someone exhaled there and forgot to fade. I stand in the doorway too long, then laugh. Guess we've got invisible overtime. By 2 a.m., 3 more rooms wait spotless. In 414, the monitor glows with a frozen heart rate line, though the cord hangs loose. In 419, a plastic cup of water beads fresh condensation. Each time, the linen box on my cart is lighter than it should be. When I radio central supply, static crackles, then a woman's voice I don't know. All clean, all clear. Silence follows. The mounting evidence of rooms cleaning themselves forced me to pause my work around 3:15 a.m. and try to verify the impossible activity using the break room console. I sit with my log sheet. The clock ticks like it's thinking too hard. I replay the night 3-1, 408, 414, 419, each vacant, each spotless. Coffee's gone cold. I switch on the CCTV feed. Ward B, 12:45 a.m., empty hall. My cart rounds the corner alone, shadow leading. Ward C, 1:30 a.m. door 408 swings open, then stops. No person in view. Light flickers once across the floor, as if a flashlight checks corners. Then nothing. Terrence always said hospitals keep the shape of people who've breathed too long inside them. Hare remembers, he claimed. Maybe. At 4 a.m. I roll back toward Ward D, settling for the strange relief that room 312 now smells faintly of soap. The sheet shows one new crease, a palm-sized press as if someone thanked me and left. The subtle acknowledgement in room 312 was soon followed by a much more overt form of assistance, as I started my final rounds, confirming I was not working alone. At 4:30 a.m., the intercom clicks once. Usually it's nurses paging pharmacy. This time, all rounds complete. The voice is calm, unfamiliar. 3 rooms still on my sheet. In 507, the floor's freshly mopped, dry to the touch. My bucket's half empty, though I haven't used it since 503. I leave it in the hall. When I return, the mop stands upright, handle resting neatly against the wall, one drip on tile. Appreciate the help, I whisper. The AC hum lifts slightly, almost like a breath. By 5 a.m. dawn leaks through ER windows, pale and slow. My supervisor, Mary, meets me at the closet. Short a pack of linens again, she asks. Guess I miscounted. She frowns but moves on. When she's gone, I see a folded sheet on the cart, edges squared, seams perfect. No one else around. I place my gloves beside it and clock out. That was last winter, and since then the invisible partnership has continued, becoming a strange, quiet rhythm to my night shift. Since then, I've kept an extra sheet on every cart. Some mornings it's gone, replaced by that faint lavender-clean scent and a turned-down corner in 312. I don't log those anymore. Hospitals never sleep. They just trade watchers. So I make my rounds, mop squeaking every 5th step, humming with the vents. When I pass an empty room, I nod toward the made bed. If someone's still working the other shift, I'm glad for the company. After all, we share the same purpose: to keep things clean, bright, and ready for the next strangers in the dark. People picture security work as danger. Alarms, intruders, movie chases. Mostly it's waiting for nothing to happen and proving that it didn't. At the freight campus where I worked, nights felt rehearsed. Same corridor rounds, same stale coffee, same raccoon on camera 3. Maybe that's why I noticed the first glitch. I'd been on graveyard for 6 months, guarding the East Logistics building on the Denver edge of I-70. One warehouse, one dispatch office, and my glass-walled booth of screens. I liked the solitude. The HVAC breathed like a tide. The sodium lights hummed. The handbook called it low-activity duty. We called it babysitting concrete. Every hour I logged camera feeds, badge entries, and gate temps. The only drama was the coffee machine, brewing mud with ambition. That Monday at 12:57 a.m., I was mid-round when the monitors jittered. Camera 7, the west loading dock, blinked white, then showed a man walking toward the side door. The timestamp read 1:02 a.m. My wall clock still said 12:57, 5 minutes ahead. The door stayed shut until 1:02, when the same figure appeared, same stride, same reflection in the rain-slick concrete. He unlocked the door, stepped inside, vanished. I logged it as possible time drift and kept working. Tuesday night, same anomaly, same door, same figure, 1:04 a.m. I leaned closer. Khaki shirt, reflective vest, flashlight clipped to the strap. My flashlight, I caught my own outline reflected in the glass beside the monitors, frozen mid-stare. Too much caffeine, I muttered. At 1:04, the real door camera caught me standing exactly where the figure had been. I shut the feed off. Wednesday, I set my phone beside the screens, syncing times to the second. At 12:55, the phone ticked forward. On the feed, future me was already walking the hall, clipboard in hand. At 1:00, I followed, matching steps. The footage stayed 5 minutes ahead, showing each turn before I made it. In the warehouse image, I bent to check a door latch. I looked up at the real door, already latched. Which one of us was live? Thursday, I tested it. At 12:30, I wrote test on a sticky note and placed it under the monitor that watched camera 7. The feed already showed the note. 5 minutes later, I wrote the same word again. Perfect match. I waved at the camera. The version of me waved first. Static prickled my fingertips when I touched the screen's warm glass. The air smelled of dust and overheated plastic. At 1:05, the door opened on screen and I walked through with my flashlight. Behind me, the real door stayed closed. Friday, the company emailed about minor timecode anomalies. I replied, "Who else is assigned to Building East overnight?" No answer. That shift I logged everything. Ballast buzz, vending machine hum, rain starting at 12:47. At 12:52 camera, 7 lit up 5 minutes ahead, showing me pouring coffee. My mug was empty. At 12:57, I found myself reaching for the pot, the handle already warm. By Saturday, I accepted the rhythm preview, reenactment, reset. The building showing me tomorrow's routine so I could survive the boredom. One monitor I switched off. It turned itself back on. At 12:48, its black screen glowed faintly, reflecting my booth empty chair, cooling coffee. 5 minutes later, it showed me sitting down again, though I hadn't moved. Control insisted the system was offline for maintenance between midnight and 4 a.m. "I'm looking at live video," I said. "Negative. No camera streaming." The supervisor yawned. Static filled the pause. "Just write it up," he said. The loop held for 3 more nights. Once the feed skipped backward, me watching myself watch it. By Wednesday, I stopped chasing the clock. The screen kept its 5-minute head start. Small tells. I scratched my jaw after seeing the image do it. The red light blinked once more before turning green. The footage wasn't predicting me. It was remembering faster. I showed printouts to a day shift guard named Reen. She laughed until she saw the timestamps each 5 minutes before capture. She handed them back without comment and transferred buildings the next week. After that, I quit saving proof. It reinstalled software twice. Nothing changed. One Friday before dawn, I stayed late. The feed showed my relief guard arriving early, waving, taking the clipboard. I waited for the real door alarm. It never sounded. When 6:00 Dala hit, the feed still played her entrance while the corridor outside stayed empty. I logged out and left before sunrise. I still keep my watch 5 minutes fast. Feels honest. People ask why I refuse solo posts. I tell them cameras don't blink. Sometimes that means they see too much. If another guard ever spots themselves a few minutes early, I hope they don't panic. Just wave back. The company swears the firmware's stable now. Digital clocks sync to the millisecond, all cloud-based. Still, when the monitors idle to black, one stays dimly lit, ghost image lingering longer than it should. Chair empty, mug half full. Someone just out of frame. Maybe it's reflection. Maybe it's the copy of me still on duty somewhere, keeping time a little better than the rest of us. Either way, I let it play. The building's never empty at night. There's always someone 5 minutes ahead, keeping watch in the dark. People think truck driving at night is freedom. Mostly it's repetition mile markers. Engine drone, tires carving the same gray line through different darknesses. I've been hauling freight across the plains for 17 years. My logbook looks more like a calendar of sunrises than a record of pay. The company calls us independent operators, which is a polite way of saying alone. That August run was supposed to be simple. Reno to Salina, 2 pallets of electronics, 3 days out and back. I'd driven it enough to know every rest stop by the smell of its coffee. Heat lightning blinked far over Utah, too distant for thunder. I rolled east on I-80 with the CB tuned to channel 19, just in case any other night drivers were awake. The radio squelched softly under the engine's hum, white noise with attitude. Around 11 p.m., dispatch pinged my tablet with a reroute that shaved 20 minutes by cutting across a service road I'd never used. The GPS said it was fine. When you're alone this long, every voice matters, even mechanical ones. At midnight, I passed a shuttered diner, neon half dead. I keyed the mic, Draker 19. This is Blue Mesa Hall 97, eastbound past mile 244. Anyone got ears? Static, then a pause, then a low, friendly voice. Copy that, Blue Mesa 97. You're making good time. I smiled. Appreciate it, driver. Who's keeping me company tonight? Just another hauler in the dark. Nothing strange until he added, you'll hit that construction detour before 255. Stay left, right lane shut. Traffic app showed no alert. 5 minutes later, orange cones appeared, exactly where he'd said. I told myself he had the same dispatch feed. Still, the hair on my arms prickled. By 12:40 a.m., the interstate narrowed to 2 lanes. The CB stayed quiet, except for a lazy hiss. I sipped coffee that tasted like engine oil and keyed up. Breaker 19, you still up? Right here. Where you headed? Same place as you. Salina? He chuckled. Give or take. Flat Midwestern vowels. Calm and polite. My kind of driver. He asked about my rig. Called it by name. That Freightliner still pulling strong. I froze. I'd mentioned that name once, 3 states back on a private dispatcher line.
How'd you know that?
Same way you know the next rest stop's got the red ice machine that rattles. He was right. I could already picture it. Have we met? I asked. More than once, he said. You just don't remember which night. I killed the radio. Silence filled the cab, broken only by tires hissing on hot asphalt. At 1 a.m., the desert stretched empty. No headlights ahead or behind, just my reflection in the windshield. At the next gas stop, I asked the clerk if any rigs had passed through. Not since 10, he said. You're it. Back in the cab, my hand brushed the mic. It was warm. The speaker popped though the CB was off. Coffee break over, the voice said. My pulse jumped. Who is this? Same run, different night. Then static. I drove another 100 miles trying to outpace whatever signal followed me. The road curved south, climbing low hills. The radio stayed dark, but the cab seemed to hum with its memory. At 2 a.m., hazard lights flickered ahead. A pickup sat sideways on the shoulder. Empty. I slowed, scanning for movement. "Don't stop," the voice warned. No glow from the radio, just words inside the cab. I braked anyway, stepped into dry heat. Dust swirled over the pavement. No footprints, no engine warmth, nothing. I climbed back in, slammed the door, gripped the wheel until the vibration steadied me. Half an hour later, I crossed mile 310. "You seeing it yet?" the voice asked. "Seeing what?" "The wreck. There's no one." Headlights caught torn guardrail up ahead. Skid marks, faint smoke, a jackknife semi halfway down the slope. I stopped. The cab plate read Mesa 97. My plate. The number on my own trailer matched digit for digit. Gravel spit under the tires as I reversed and drove east without looking back. Near 3 a.m., I pulled into a rest stop cafe. One fluorescent bulb buzzed like a fly. The waitress, gray ponytail, poured coffee. Long haul? Too long. She nodded toward the CB behind the counter. "For a lot of ghosts on the wire these days. You just ignore them." I wanted to laugh but couldn't. "You've heard things too?" She only topped off my mug and walked away humming a low, tuneless song. When dawn leaked over the plains, the highway looked ordinary again. Signs bright, traffic returning. In Salina, I made delivery, parked among identical freightliners, and sat until the cab cooled. Before shutting down, I reached for the mic. It was warm again, like someone had just used it. Static whispered through, even though the power light stayed dark. "Catch you on the next run," the voice said. I pulled the fuse. I still drive nights. Darkness doesn't pretend you're not alone. But my CB stays silent. No chatter, no check-ins, just the road's hum, and the thought that maybe somewhere a different version of me is answering calls I can't hear anymore. If that echo ever finds me again, I'll know better than to reply. Strangers talk in the dark all the time. Not all of them are still here to listen.